Chapter 193, The Great Xia Dynasty is established, and the system is upgraded. Xiang Yu merely glanced at the man in front of him, then immediately disappeared from the spot with him. When he reappeared, he had already arrived inside the palace of the Great Xia. At this moment, Chu Fan, who was in the sky, had also completed his tribulation. This time, the lightning tribulation was exceptionally easy for him. As the lightning tribulation finished, the thunderclouds in the sky slowly dissipated, and Chu Fan's figure gradually appeared before everyone's eyes. The imperial Dao Qi on his body completely erupted at this moment, making him stand before the crowd truly like an emperor. Starting today, the Great Xia Dynasty is officially established. I shall be the first emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty, marking the first year of Great Xia. Chu Fan's gaze swept over the cultivators present, and then his domineering voice slowly entered everyone's ears. Simultaneously, a luck dragon completely circled above Chang'an City. This caused the spiritual qi in Chang'an City to become dense. Some cultivators even achieved a breakthrough in their cultivation amidst this dense spiritual qi. Your subjects respectfully greet your majesty. As soon as Chu Fan finished speaking, the ministers below him bowed and knelt toward him, their eyes filled with reverence. Your subordinate general respectfully greets your majesty. Dian Wei, Su Chu, and the other generals also eagerly knelt before Chu Fan. Greetings, your majesty. The armies behind them also knelt toward Chu Fan in succession, their words filled with fervor and worship, and their voices quickly spread throughout all of Chang'an. Greetings, your majesty. Greetings, your majesty. The common people and cultivators of Chang'an City also knelt toward Chu Fan amidst the army's fervor, seeming as if they had truly become Chu Fan's devotees at this moment. Rise! Chu Fan looked at the crowd and spoke softly, yet his voice spread throughout all of Chang'an, allowing everyone in the city to hear his majestic voice. We thank your majesty. After hearing Chu Fan's words, everyone bowed once more toward Chu Fan before slowly rising to their feet. After the enthronement ceremony was completed, Chu Fan was escorted by the crowd into the imperial palace of Chang'an City. This would be the first court session of the newly established Great Xia Dynasty. As for Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong, they had handed over all their troops to Chu Fan, so they did not participate in this court session. Those who attended this court session were the veteran officials who had followed Chu Fan. Naturally, Yang Tianzhan and Ouyang Tian were also among them, as they were generals who had surrendered to Chu Fan. Upon entering the palace, Chu Fan slowly walked to the imperial throne, accompanied by Qing Yao. Chu Fan then waved his hand and sat directly in his wheelchair. Below, Guijia and the others stood in the great hall, their eyes filled with excitement. After all, their dream had finally been realized today. Chu Fan smiled as he looked at the ministers below, but when his gaze landed in Guijia's direction, the corner of his mouth twitched. The Great Xia Dynasty was still lacking in civil officials. Zhao Gao, begin. After glancing at everyone, Chu Fan slowly turned his attention to Zhao Gao beside him and spoke. Since the establishment of the Great Xia Dynasty, Zhao Gao has served as the chief eunuch, making him Chu Fan's most trusted eunuch. Your Majesty's establishment of the Great Xia Dynasty is inseparable from everyone's support. Therefore, your Majesty shall now grant titles to all of you. Now, this old minister shall read out the posts of the various generals. Upon hearing Chu Fan's words, Zhao Gao cupped his hands toward Chu Fan and slowly stepped forward, holding a shimmering golden imperial edict. After speaking, Zhao Gao turned his gaze toward Guijia in the front. Guijia, heed the decree. You are appointed as military advisor, temporarily holding a rank 2 official post. After hearing Zhao Gao's words, Guijia slowly stepped forward and bowed to Chu Fan, a hint of excitement appearing in his eyes. Chen Xingji, heed the decree. You are appointed as general who conquers the south, commanding 500,000 troops. Chen Jibao, heed the decree. You are appointed as general who guards the north, commanding 10,000 great snow dragon cavalry and 500,000 northern garrison troops. Next came Chu Fan's conferment of titles upon the generals present. This round of appointments was the result of discussions Chu Fan had held with Chu Long and others during this period. He did not confer titles upon non-imperial kings, unlike the Great Yin Dynasty. Although he had complete confidence in the generals he had summoned, he had completely eliminated the existence of non-imperial kings for now. Instead, he directly appointed all these individuals as generals. Furthermore, Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu were specifically appointed as White Horse General and Demon God General, respectively. Yang Tianzhan, Ouyang Tian, and the others were also appointed as regional generals. After the appointments were completed, Chu Fan, feeling somewhat bored, returned to his palace. He hadn't expected being an emperor to be so exhausting. However, Chu Fan did not rest upon returning to his palace. Instead, he began summoning his system. After establishing the Great Xia Dynasty, the system was fully activated, and upon activation, it also gained a system shop. System, what functions do you have now? Chu Fan, having summoned the system, slowly looked towards it and asked curiously. Before the Great Xia Dynasty was established, the system could only summon once a month. Although the system was already very helpful to Chu Fan at the time, he wanted to see how much the upgraded system would improve his situation. Ding! The system primarily has 3 functions after upgrading. The first is that you can still perform one summon every month, and the opportunity for the monthly summon is unrestricted. This means the cultivation realm of the summon character in the host's monthly summon opportunity is not limited. It is possible to summon a peerless expert, or it is possible to summon an ordinary person. Chu Fan nodded after hearing the system's explanation. Although the one monthly summon opportunity existed from the beginning, there were clearly changes after the system upgrade. However, what left him speechless was the possibility of summoning ordinary people. What use was summoning ordinary people now, when the Great Xia Dynasty already had hundreds of billions of them? The second is that the host can open the system shop and search for items the host wishes to purchase inside. Purchasing summon characters or items to enhance strength requires national destiny value. If the host has enough national destiny value, your cultivation realm can be raised to the Great Emperor realm. Chu Fan was slightly surprised upon hearing the system's second function. Although he had long known the system would have a system shop, he never expected the system shop could directly raise his cultivation realm. Wouldn't this be equivalent to cheating? Chapter 194: The Role of National Fortune Values and the Dazzling System Shop. Thinking that he himself could transmigrate, it was only normal for the system to be a bit overpowered. What's more, Chu Fan didn't want to cultivate himself, so if he had such an opportunity, he naturally couldn't give it up. Thinking of this, Chu Fan immediately opened his attribute panel. Host, Chu Fan Physique, Innate Dao Body, Minor Achievement, plus Cultivation Technique. Heaven-swallowing Demonic Art Emperor Grade, Minor Achievement, plus Martial Skill. Human Emperor Sword Art Saint Grade, Human Gate, plus 100 Birds Paying Homage to the Phoenix Spear King Grade, Minor Achievement, plus Cloud Stepping Heaven Grade, Minor Achievement, plus Cultivation. Middle King Realm plus Summon Characters. Dang Tai Initial Saint Realm. Unbeatable in the East Peak True King Realm. Xiangyu. Peak True King Realm. Li Yuanba Middle True King Realm. Chun Jibao King Completion Realm. Summoned Armies. Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, 10,000. White Horse Volunteers, 3,000. Black Armored Iron Cavalry, 200,000. Bingzhou Iron Cavalry. Special Army. 18 Riders of Yin Yun Weapons. Human Emperor Sword Saint Rank. Human Emperor Robe Saint Rank. White Dragon Spear Heaven Rank National Destiny Value, 5 million. Chu Fan was somewhat surprised looking at his attribute panel. As for why his cultivation realm reached the Middle King realm, it was because he had experienced the baptism of the Heavenly Tribulation during the Heavenly Tribulation, which allowed his cultivation realm to rise to the Middle King realm. At the same time, seeing the plus signs, plus symbol, behind his cultivation realm, cultivation technique, and martial skill, Chu Fan understood. System. How far can all my current national destiny value raise my cultivation realm? Chu Fan immediately asked the system, wanting to know how far he could raise his cultivation realm with all his national destiny value. Ding! All the host's current national destiny value can raise the host cultivation realm to the perfected true king realm. But the system reminds the host that the most important thing right now is not to increase his own strength, but to increase the national destiny value. This way, there will be more national destiny value to improve his strength in the future. As soon as Chu Fan finished speaking, the system's voice rang out in his mind. How should I increase my national destiny value? Chu Fan became even more confused after hearing the system's words, so he immediately started questioning the system again. Expanding the territory of the Imperial Dynasty or increasing the strength of the cultivators within the Imperial Dynasty can increase national destiny value. Alternatively, governing the Imperial Dynasty and gaining the admiration of the Imperial Dynasty's cultivators can also grant national destiny value. As soon as Chu Fan finished speaking, the system's explanation rang out in his mind, helping him understand how to increase national destiny value. Moreover, in that instant, his national destiny value on the attribute panel increased by tens of thousands. This must be the national destiny value gained from admiration that the system mentioned. In that case, the best method is to unify the entire Eastern region. When that happens, my national destiny value will definitely reach tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. Chu Fan began to ponder. Following the system's methods, the easiest way for him to gain national destiny value right now was to unify the entire Eastern region. Of course, this was also the simplest and most direct way. After all, it would be quite easy for the character Chu Fan summoned to unify the entire eastern region. After all, he didn't believe there was a saint-level expert among the other three great dynasties of the eastern region. Therefore, relying on the Peach Blossom Sword God Dang Tai, Chu Fan could directly be invincible across the entire eastern region. As for whether the other three great dynasties had true King Realm experts, Chu Fan couldn't quite guess. Since the Great Yin dynasty had true King Realm experts, it should be normal for the other three great dynasties to have true King Realm experts as well. System. Open the system store. After setting aside the thoughts in his mind, Chu Fan curiously recalled the system store that was about to be activated this time. Ding! System store opened successfully. As the system's voice fell, Chu Fan's mind entered the system store. Pangu Essence Blood, 100 billion national destiny value. Summon Character Master of the Heavens, 500 billion national destiny value. Magic Treasure Eastern Emperor Bell, 50 billion national destiny value. Chu Fan was completely stunned looking at the items in the system store. He hadn't expected that he could even exchange for the Master of the Heavens and others in the system store. However, when he saw the national destiny value required, he was completely dumbfounded. Even a minor character from the investiture of the God's world required hundreds of millions of national destiny value. Where is he supposed to get so much national destiny value? System, filter the items I can currently afford. He rolled his eyes at the system, then slowly spoke. Power Seal Release Card. Usable below, True King Realm, 1 million national destiny value. True King Realm Character, Summoning Card. 1 million national destiny value. King Realm Character, Summoning Card. 200,000 national destiny value. Dharma Aspect Realm Character, Summoning Card. 50,000 national destiny value. Great Snow Dragon Cavalry Army, Summoning Card. 10,000 2 million national destiny value. Black Armored Iron Cavalry Summoning Card. 100,000 1 million national destiny value. White Horse Volunteers Summoning Card. 100,000 1 million national destiny value. Small Talent Enhancement Pill. 10,000 national destiny value. Realm Breaking Pill. Can be used by cultivators below the True King Realm to break through a minor realm. 100,000 national destiny value. Saint Breaking Pill. Cultivators below entering Saint can use this pill to break through a minor realm. 1 million national destiny value. Looking at the dazzling array of items in the system store, Chu Fan instantly became excited, but he finally fixed his gaze on the Talent Enhancement Pill. Soon, he opened the description of the Talent Enhancement Pill. This Talent Enhancement Pill could enhance a cultivator's cultivation talent, but because it was a small Talent Enhancement Pill, this one could only raise a person's cultivation talent to the King Realm talent level. But for Chu Fan, it was enough. After all, what he wanted to improve was the cultivation talent of his grandfather and a few others. Being able to raise their cultivation talent to the King Realm talent level was sufficient, as King Realm talent could allow a person to cultivate and break through to the true King Realm without any difficulty. System, exchange for 10 Talent Enhancement Pills. A price of only 10,000 national destiny value posed no difficulty for Chu Fan, so he immediately exchanged for 10 Talent Enhancement Pills. After 100,000 national destiny value was deducted, a clean white bottle appeared in Chu Fan's hand, and inside the bottle were naturally 10 Talent Enhancement Pills. Should I exchange for 2 Saint Breaking Pills? After exchanging for the Talent Enhancement Pill, Chu Fan thoughtfully looked toward the Saint Breaking Pill. If he exchanged for 2 Saint Breaking Pills, it would cost 2 million national destiny value. However, the Saint Breaking Pills exchange for 2 million national destiny value could allow Unbeatable in the East and Xiangyu to break through to the entering Saint Realm. In that case, the Great Xia Dynasty would have 3 Saint-level experts. However, he also wanted to exchange for the Power Seal Release Card, since if Qin Xiong and the others use the Power Seal Release Card, their cultivation realms should all break through to the True King Realm. Chapter 195, Summoning 5 Strategists. First meeting with Deng Tai and the others. However, it must be said that the Seal Release Card requires a significant amount of national destiny value. Never mind, I'll exchange for 2 Saint Breaking Pills first. After thinking for a moment, Chu Fan decided to directly exchange for 2 Saint Breaking Pills, which would give his Great Xia Dynasty 3 Saint-level experts. As for the seal release of the cultivation of Qin Xiong and others, he would wait until he had enough national destiny value to exchange for it. Moreover, the speed at which Qin Xiong and the others cultivate is not slow. Chu Fan believes that by then their cultivation will not be too weak, and the seal release will grant them a greater increase in strength. One must know that during this period, Luo Cheng broke through to the King Realm purely based on his talent, and Lu Bu's cultivation had even reached the Middle King Realm, making the difference compared to using a seal release card not particularly significant. After Chu Fan exchanged for these 2 saint-breaking pills, his system panel only had 3 million national destiny value remaining. And this 3 million national destiny value was entirely due to the currently increasing national destiny value. Otherwise, his system panel would not even have 3 million national destiny value. System: when summoning characters, can I specify a preference? For example, if I want to summon civil officials, is that possible? Chu Fan realized that his great Xia dynasty seemed to only have Guojia as a civil official capable of taking on great responsibility, so he frowned and asked the system. After speaking, he held a hint of anticipation. Possible. The system quickly answered Chu Fan's question. Since that's the case, I will exchange for 5 King Realm civil officials. Upon hearing the system's reply, Chu Fan breathed a sigh of relief and immediately looked toward the King Realm summoning cards. The host successfully exchanged for 5 King Realm summoning cards and has successfully opened them for the host. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King Realm summoned character Wang Meng. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King Realm summoned character Wu Yong. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King Realm summoned character Fong Xianling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King Realm summoned character Du Ruhui. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King Realm summoned character Su Shu. Following Chu Fan's exchange for these 5 King Realm summoned characters, 5 more individuals appeared in his system space, and all 5 were strategists from Chinese history. I didn't expect to summon these 5 people, but summoning them perfectly solves the great Xia dynasty's weakness, as every one of them is a famous historical figure. Chu Fan was very happy to see the 5 individuals in the system space, as they were all renowned historical figures. Any one of them could be called a paragon of their era. System: exchange the remaining national destiny value for 1 seal release card and 100,000 White Horse volunteers. Looking at the remaining national destiny value in the system space, Chu Fan directly exchanged it for 1 seal release card and 100,000 White Horse volunteers. Zhao Zilong's commanding ability is not weak at all, which is why Chu Fan granted him the title of Great General, but currently, the number of troops under Zhao Zilong is too small, which is why Chu Fan decided to exchange for these 100,000 White Horse volunteers. As for the armies currently led by Qin Xiong and the other generals, their numbers are substantial, although the quantity of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry led by Chen Jibao is not high. However, the strength of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry can compensate for this. Only after using up all the national destiny value did Chu Fan look toward the system's final function. Since the system has 3 functions, Chu Fan naturally wanted to understand what the 3rd function was. System: tell me about your 3rd function. Chu Fan stared at the system and spoke slowly. Ding! The system's 3rd function is to issue missions. As long as the host can complete the missions issued by the system, rewards will be granted. If the missions are failed, the system will impose no punishment. The system's 3rd function is very simple. It acts like a mission board, issuing missions to Chu Fan. As long as he can complete the mission, he can receive the system's rewards. Of course, what surprised Chu Fan the most was that there was no penalty for failing a system mission. This truly is a user-friendly system. Since that's the case, issue a few missions. After understanding the system's final function, Chu Fan nodded in satisfaction, and then looked toward the empty system mission board. Ding! Main mission 1 issued. Please host, unify the entire eastern region. Rewards: 3 Saint entry-level summoning cards, 1-time pagoda. Ding! Current mission issued. Resolve the enemies arriving from the Sea Tribe. Reward: 1 True King summoning card. Ding! Chain mission issued. Resolve the Sea Tribe. Reward: 5 Saint entry-level summoning cards. Ding! Mission issued. Capture the Tianxin Dynasty. Reward: 3 True King Realm summoning cards. Ding! Mission issued. Capture the Mengyuan Dynasty. Reward: 4 True King Realm summoning cards. Ding! Mission issued. Capture the Fengyan Dynasty. Reward: 1 Saint entry-level summoning card. As soon as Chu Fan finished speaking, many system missions appeared on the system mission board. What surprised Chu Fan the most was the mission concerning the Sea Tribe. He hadn't expected the Sea Tribe to trigger a chain mission. Moreover, the reward for resolving the Sea Tribe is not weak. It seems the Sea Tribe's strength is considerable. Otherwise, the system rewards wouldn't be this generous. Looking at the missions related to the Sea Tribe, a hint of melancholy appeared on Chu Fan's face, but the melancholy quickly vanished, replaced mostly by joy. However, now is not the time to deal with the Sea Tribe. The most important thing now should be to unify the entire eastern region first, which conveniently completes a system mission. Chu Fan then began analyzing the system missions. Based on the completion difficulty of the system missions, unifying the entire eastern region would be the simplest. Before unifying the entire eastern region, he could first capture the other 3 great dynasties, obtain the rewards, and then unify the entire eastern region, allowing him to focus solely on dealing with the Sea Tribe afterward. After fully understanding this system upgrade, Chu Fan slowly withdrew from the system space, and then he slowly walked out of the main hall, carrying the medicinal pills in his hand. Upon leaving the main hall, he went directly to a side hall in the Imperial Palace, which was the Hall of Offerings established by Chu Fan, housing the foundation he had summoned. Inside the Hall of Offerings at this moment were naturally Deng Taiye and a few others. Chu Fan quickly entered the Hall of Offerings. The people inside naturally sensed Chu Fan's arrival, and they all bowed to him. Chu Fan waved his hand at the people before him, and then he carefully observed the few individuals present. The person standing at the very front wore a coarse linen robe and looked no different from an ordinary commoner, but the sword intent emanating from him was impossible to ignore. Standing next to him was a middle-aged man whose entire body radiated an overbearing aura. The middle-aged man was burly. Just by looking at him, one knew he was not to be trifled with. Chapter 196 Guijia uses the unsealing card, Chu Fan's hot items. The last one was dressed in a red robe, appearing incredibly enchanting, yet a domineering aura could be sensed from her exquisite face. These 3 were Peach Blossom, Sword God Deng Taiye, Overlord Xiangyu, and Unbeatable in the East. Xiangyu and Dongfang Bai. These 2 medicinal pills are for you two to consume. I hope you will break through to the entering Saint Realm as quickly as possible. Chu Fan looked at the 3 individuals before him and slowly retrieved the medicinal pills he had purchased from his system space. Of course, the medicinal pills he took out this time were saint-breaking pills. He directly handed the saint-breaking pills to Xiangyu and Dongfang Bai. As for why Chu Fan called Unbeatable in the East Dongfang Bai, it was mainly because her original name was Dongfang Bai. We too obey. Xiangyu and Dongfang Bai nodded after hearing Chu Fan's words. Then, the 2 of them took the saint-breaking pills and began their breakthrough. They completely disregarded their current situation. Of course, they didn't need to worry about their current situation. After all, their current situation was extremely safe, protected by Peach Blossom Sword God Deng Taiye, a saint-level expert. It could be said that there was no safer place in the entire eastern region than where they were. After Chu Fan handed them the saint-breaking pills, he slowly left. He didn't pay attention to Unbeatable in the East and Xiangyu's breakthrough. Anyway, with Peach Blossom, Sword God Deng Taiye guarding them, he naturally didn't need to wait for the 2 to break through here, and they weren't needed for battle at the moment. Chu Fan, having left the place where Deng Taiye was, leisurely made his way to Guijia's palace. Although Guijia had been appointed as a military advisor, Chu Fan hadn't made him move out of the Imperial Palace. So, at this moment, he was in a small courtyard within a side hall of the Imperial Palace. With nothing to do, Guijia spent his days drinking and enjoying himself. Chu Fan, accompanied by Qingyao, slowly stepped into his small courtyard. Seeing Guijia lying on a chair drinking wine, a twitch appeared at the corner of Chu Fan's mouth. He hadn't expected this fellow to live even more comfortably than himself. However, this was also normal. After all, Guijia rarely handled government affairs, and now, Chu Fan had even summoned several such powerful talents. Therefore, he no longer needed to manage the Great Xia Dynasty's government affairs. He only needed to follow along when the Great Xia Dynasty sent out its army. Jia greets your majesty. Guijia watched Chu Fan slowly walk into his courtyard, leisurely rose from his chair, and cupped his hands towards Chu Fan. Then, he slowly pulled over a chair, clearly intending for Chu Fan to sit on it. Chu Fan didn't speak much with Guijia. Instead, he calmly waved his hand and directly sat on the chair. Your Majesty, you didn't just come to see your subject this time, did you? After seeing Chu Fan sit down, Guijia finally asked Chu Fan with a curious expression. This time, I've come to give you an opportunity. Chu Fan naturally knew Guijia's temperament. So, he helplessly said to Guijia, and after speaking, he looked at Guijia with a serious expression. What opportunity does your Majesty wish to give me? Guijia became even more curious after hearing Chu Fan's words. He immediately sat up straight, his eyes fixed on Chu Fan. Eat it. Chu Fan looked at Guijia before him with some helplessness. So he took out a medicinal pill as white as jade from his system space and directly threw it to Guijia. Although Guijia was somewhat confused about what this medicinal pill was, he had full confidence in Chu Fan. Therefore, Guijia didn't hesitate at all and directly swallowed the medicinal pill. Subsequently, Guijia's body was enveloped by spiritual qi, wrapping him up like a cocoon. At the same time, the aura around him also began to continuously rise. In just a few breaths, his aura had risen to the Dharma aspect realm. Moreover, after reaching the Dharma aspect realm, This aura did not stop but continued to strengthen. Guo Jia could be said to be one of the earliest individuals to follow Chu Fan, so his realm was the lowest among the summoned individuals. This was also why Chu Fan unsealed his strength first. And that pure white, jade-like medicinal pill earlier was actually a seal release card. A strength seal release card could transform into anything based on Chu Fan's imagination. This was also why the strength seal release card appeared as a pure white, jade-like medicinal pill. Chu Fan did not leave as he watched Guo Jia continuously break through. Although it was extremely safe here in the Imperial Palace of Chang'an, he still wanted to see to what extent this seal release card could boost Guo Jia's strength. Qing Yao also watched Guo Jia's advancement with a serious expression from the side. Before long, your strength will also receive a powerful boost, just like this fellow. At this moment, Chu Fan naturally saw the envy in Qing Yao's eyes. So he slowly reached out, stroked Qing Yao's head, and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Upon hearing Chu Fan's words, a look of excitement instantly appeared in Qing Yao's eyes, and she looked at Chu Fan with gratitude. Chu Fan looked at Qing Yao before him, then shifted his gaze to his system panel. According to the rate of increase of national destiny value on the system panel, it could now increase by over 100,000 national destiny value per day. This meant that in at most 10 days, he could exchange for a strength seal release card. At that time, the individuals Chu Fan had previously summoned could have their strength increased. There were quite a few people who needed strength seal release cards now, whether it was Qing Yao by his side or Zhao Gao's people. As for Zhao Gao, Chu Fan's eyes leisurely looked towards an item in the system mall. Group Strength Seal Release Card, 10 million national destiny value. Can unseal summon groups below the Saint entry level. This item was very suitable for Zhao Gao and Net of Luo, but this item required too much national destiny value. If based on the current growth rate, Chu Fan would need at least several months to unseal Zhao Gao and Net of Luo. But time was not on his side now. Of course, Chu Fan could also conquer other countries to increase national destiny value. If he did that, he believed it wouldn't be long before all his subordinates could have their strength increased. Just as Chu Fan was thinking about how to increase his national destiny value, the aura around Guo Jia, who was beside him, had already reached the True King realm. Finally, Guo Jia's aura reached the peak True King realm before slowly coming to a halt. As Guo Jia's aura ceased, the spiritual qi shield that had enveloped him slowly dissipated. Guo Jia instantly appeared before Chu Fan and Qing Yao. At this moment, although he hadn't changed much from before, he appeared much more mysterious. Chapter 197, The 5 Divine Beast Guardian Array Protects Chang'an. I never expected such a small medicinal pill to allow my cultivation to break through to the peak True King realm. It seems Your Majesty put a lot of effort into this medicinal pill. I thank Your Majesty in advance. Guo Jia slowly opened his eyes, bowed to Chu Fan, and said, "It must be known that this medicinal pill directly raised his cultivation from the spirit roaming realm to the True King realm. During this period, he directly bypassed the Dharma aspect realm and the King realm, reaching the True King realm. Such a leap had far exceeded the imagination of ordinary people. Don't always think about drinking in the future. Just do more things for me." Chu Fan, seeing Guo Jia's serious expression, also helplessly patted his shoulder and said, Guo Jia was originally a 1 in 10,000 genius, but he was exceptionally lazy. He was either drinking or on his way to drink. Therefore, no matter how talented he was, his cultivation speed was caught up by others. Otherwise, if Guo Jia had truly cultivated, his realm would not have remained in the spirit roaming realm. After all, when Azure Bird was summoned, her strength was only at the spirit roaming realm. Now, through her diligent cultivation, her realm has reached the middle stage of the Dharma body realm. It can be said that her strength has greatly improved over the past year or so. Guo Jia smiled after hearing Chu Fan's words. Then, he slowly picked up a bottle of wine from the table and started drinking. Your Majesty, since my strength has improved, I will now go and complete the task I initially wanted to do. After finishing his drink, Guo Jia slowly stood up and said to Chu Fan. After speaking, he directly soared into the air, instantly appearing above Chang'an City. At this time, he did not hide his figure, causing all the cultivators in Chang'an City to see Guo Jia above the city. The cultivators of Chang'an City naturally knew Guo Jia's identity, so although they were puzzled by his appearance in the sky, they did not speak out to disturb him. Even Yang Tianzhan and the other generals did not speak when they saw Guo Jia in the sky at this time. Instead, they looked at Guo Jia in the sky with expectant eyes. Guo Jia naturally ignored the cultivators and generals of Chang'an City. Instead, he slowly formed hand seals around Chang'an City. Subsequently, streams of spiritual qi suddenly erupted from all directions of Chang'an City. The next second, a white tiger phantom appeared at the east gate of Chang'an City, while an azure dragon phantom appeared at the west gate of Chang'an City. However, this was not all. A vermilion bird's cry suddenly sounded from the north gate of Chang'an City, and then a vermilion bird phantom appeared at the north gate of Chang'an City. Corresponding to the vermilion bird phantom at the north gate, a Xuanwu phantom also appeared at the south gate. Instantly, the four divine beasts directly enveloped the entire Chang'an City, as if forming a shortcut. At the same time as these four divine beast phantoms appeared, they also gathered energy above the imperial palace of Chang'an City. As the energy continuously gathered above Chang'an City, the next second, a Qilin phantom slowly walked out from the very center of the gathered energy. This Qilin appeared so domineering. He slowly stepped onto the sky, step by step, and then completely stabilized this formation. After the formation was stabilized, the phantoms of the four great divine beasts in the sky slowly dissipated, while the Qilin phantom gradually merged into the imperial palace of Chang'an City. After doing all this, Guijia clapped his hands in satisfaction. Then, without paying attention to the many common people and cultivators of Chang'an City, he directly returned to the imperial palace. I never expected you to have such a trick up your sleeve. Chu Fan looked at Guijia, who appeared before him as if nothing had happened, and said with emotion. He also did not expect Guijia to bring him such a great surprise. At this moment, Chu Fan could feel that the entire Chang'an City was enveloped by this formation. Even a saint-level expert would find it difficult to forcibly break this formation. This formation of mine is called the Five Divine Beast Guardian Formation. When the Great Xia Dynasty was first established, I wanted to set up this formation, but my strength was insufficient at that time, so it was delayed until now. Guijia waved his hand helplessly after hearing Chu Fan's words. Then, he started picking up the wine on the table and drinking again, as if he would perish if he left the wine. Chu Fan also felt helpless looking at Guijia in front of him. After staying with Guijia for a while, Chu Fan slowly headed towards the location of Chu Long and the others. And Guijia's actions just now had completely attracted the attention of the entire Chang'an City. I never expected our military advisor to have such powerful capabilities. Perhaps now the safest place in the entire eastern region is our Chang'an City. In Yang Tianzhan's general's residence, Yang Tianzhan slowly recovered from a shock. He did not expect that in the blink of an eye, Guijia had set up a formation in Chang'an City. Although Yang Tianzhan did not know how powerful this formation was, he now firmly believed that Chang'an City was the safest place in the entire eastern region. Those who shared the same thoughts as Yang Tianzhan were naturally Ouyang Tian and the other generals who were not summoned by Chu Fan. As for the generals summoned by Chu Fan, they were not too shocked, as they all knew how powerful their respective strengths were. Of course, at this time, the common people and cultivators of Chang'an City were even more shocked. They did not expect that in just a blink of an eye, Chang'an City would have such a terrifying formation. Did our great Xia's military advisor just set up a formation for Chang'an City? It seems so, and this formation even featured the five great divine beasts. It looks so powerful. It must be powerful. After all, this is a formation set up by our great Xia's military advisor. I believe he can definitely withstand a King Realm cultivator. Perhaps it can withstand the attacks of cultivators above the King Realm. After all, this is a formation laid down by the military advisor of the Great Xia Dynasty, so how could it be so simple? After a brief silence, the entire Chang'an City suddenly fell into a series of discussions. Many people were discussing how powerful the formation set up by Guijia was. Of course, at this time, the cultivators of Chang'an City also knew about the existence of the King Realm, so they all speculated whether this formation could withstand the attacks of King Realm cultivators. Of course, some cultivators were purely worshipping Guijia. After all, this was the only military advisor since the establishment of the Great Xia Dynasty. Therefore, they naturally greatly admired Guijia, and what's more, Guijia had just set up such a formation, even summoning the five divine beasts. Chapter 198, The Leisurely Chu Family Members, the shock brought by the talent enhancement pill. Just as the entire Chang'an was discussing the strategist Guijia, Shao Zi's saint-level guardian in a side hall of the imperial palace was utterly shocked by Guijia's recent actions. Chu Fan truly lives up to his reputation as someone who constantly surprises us. Guijia's recent actions have far surpassed those of ordinary spellcasters in the central region. Even our Taishan Holy Land would be hard-pressed to find many who could achieve this level. Then, Shao Zi's guardian slowly looked towards Guijia's courtyard and spoke, saying that although he had been continuously surprised by the Great Xia Dynasty during this period, he had not expected the Great Xia Dynasty to be so terrifying. At its current rate of development, it would probably not be long before it caught up to the Taishan Holy Land. If someone had told him that a small force in the eastern region could surpass their Taishan Holy Land in a few hundred years, he would have absolutely refused to believe it. But now, Witnessing the development of the Great Xia dynasty, he had become that person who refused to believe it. The Great Xia dynasty's development was simply too rapid, far exceeding his imagination. Because he had just sensed a saint entry-level aura within the Great Xia dynasty, which meant that the Great Xia dynasty had a saint-level expert overseeing it. Didn't that mean the Great Xia dynasty now had a saint-level expert? One must know that when they first entered the eastern region, the strongest expert in the Great Xia dynasty's predecessor, the Prince of Jinbei's estate, was merely a Dharma aspect realm existence. Of course, the first time they met Chu Fan, there were king realm cultivators around him, but at that time, the strongest among them was only Yuan Qingdu, an early-stage king. Yet now, in less than a year, Chu Fan was surrounded by saint-level experts. It should be known that there is a true king realm separating a saint-level expert and a king realm cultivator. However, with Chu Fan, it seemed remarkably easy for stronger cultivators to appear. Moreover, the cultivators appearing around Chu Fan were not particularly old. They were all individuals who could be considered prodigies, even in the central region. He was utterly baffled as to why Chu Fan had so many prodigy cultivators around him. But no matter how much he pondered, there was nothing he could do, as Chu Fan himself was a mystery. Of course, as a cheat, Chu Fan would naturally not let him know the truth. Xiao Zi smiled after hearing the old man beside her speak. At this moment, she felt that even the appearance of a great saint-level expert around Chu Fan would be perfectly normal, as Chu Fan himself was a mystery. Or perhaps Xiao Zi had completely fallen, so now, no matter what appeared around Chu Fan, she considered it perfectly normal. Meanwhile, Chu Fan and Qing Yao also arrived at the palace where Chu Long and the others resided. Since Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong stopped interfering with the Great Xia dynasty, they had set up a palace not far from the imperial palace and settled there. This palace was once owned by a prince of the former Great Yan imperial dynasty. Due to their small number, Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong both moved into this prince's palace, directly claiming it for themselves. When Chu Fan arrived, Chu Tianxiong and Jia Qiming were playing chess, while Chu Long and Feng Zhan, who were beside them, were also playing chess. They all appeared very leisurely. Moreover, Chu Fan's arrival did not attract the attention of anyone present. "Greetings, grandfather, maternal grandfather, elder Jia." Chu Fan bowed to the people in the courtyard one by one. Although he was now considered the emperor of the Great Xia dynasty, his seniority here was still the lowest, and everyone present was someone he respected. "The Great Xia dynasty has just been established. Why aren't you in the imperial palace considering how to maintain it, instead of coming to us old men?" After hearing Chu Fan's words, Chu Long paused with a chess piece for a moment, then slowly spoke to Chu Fan. After speaking, his chess piece landed directly on the board. As for Feng Shiran, she came to Chu Fan's side with a concerned expression, scrutinizing him up and down. She was very worried about her son. Now, Feng Shiran didn't care whether her son was the emperor of the Great Xia dynasty. She only wanted her child to live a stable and happy life. All internal affairs of the imperial dynasty have been handed over to them, and now the entire Great Xia dynasty is under my grandson's control, so there's nothing that requires my decision. And even if it did, I have the time. Chu Fan naturally knew his grandfather was worried about him, so he slowly explained to Chu Long. After speaking, he slowly moved to Chu Tianxiong and the others. Qing Yao, behind him, followed closely by his side. Even when he approached Chu Long and the others, she remained right by Chu Fan's side. Feng Shiran covered her mouth and chuckled at this sight. She naturally saw the affection for her son in Qing Yao's eyes, but she didn't voice it at this moment. "Since Xiao Fan is here, stay and eat with us. It's been a long time since we've eaten together." Feng Shiran waved to Chu Fan and said, her face full of doting affection after she finished speaking. Chu Fan nodded after hearing his mother's words. Then he slowly took out the talent enhancement pill from his storage ring. His main purpose for coming here this time was to give these medicinal pills to his family members to consume. "Actually, my main purpose for coming here this time is to give this to you, grandfather. This item is called a talent enhancement pill, and it can raise your talent to king rank. At that time, breaking through to the king realm will be even easier." After Chu Fan took out the jade bottle, he slowly spoke to the people in front of him. After speaking, he slowly opened the jade bottle and then directly took out one pill from inside, handing it to Feng Shiran, who was in front of him. Feng Shiran was somewhat surprised as she held the talent enhancement pill, but she still took it without the slightest hesitation. Instantly, it was as if shackles on her body had been directly broken. At the same time, her cultivation also directly rose from the divine power realm to the grotto heaven realm. Chu Tianxiong, feeling this, immediately stood up and looked at the bottle in Chu Fan's hand with fervent eyes. At this moment, he wished he could directly snatch the talent enhancement pill from Chu Fan's hand. However, at that time, he couldn't bring himself to take something from his own son's hand. Chu Fan naturally saw this scene, so he slowly poured out one pill from the bottle and handed it to Chu Tianxiong. Chapter 199, Everyone's Breakthrough. Chu Fan being urged to marry. Seeing this scene, Chu Tianxiong also carefully accepted the talent enhancement pill, while giving Chu Fan a glare. He clearly felt that Chu Fan's recent action was a bit unworthy of the talent enhancement pill in his hand. Chu Fan, however, ignored Chu Tianxiong and instead poured out more talent enhancement pills from the J bottle, then slowly walked towards Chu Long and the others, handing the medicinal pills to them. Zhao Fan, I don't know if this talent enhancement pill is useful to you. If it is, don't waste it on an old man like me. Although Chu Long was very eager for the talent enhancement pill in his hand, at this moment, he was still thinking of his grandson, so he looked at Chu Fan and spoke slowly. After his words fell, Jia Qiming and the others also turned their gazes towards Chu Fan, although they also wanted to improve their cultivation. But the most important thing now was to improve Chu Fan's talent. After all their hopes in this life were placed on Chu Fan. Grandfather, this talent enhancement pill doesn't have much effect on me. I already possess the Innate Dao Body, and my talent has long surpassed the scope that the talent enhancement pill can improve. Moreover, my cultivation has already reached the King realm. After Chu Fan heard his grandfather's words, his heart warmed. He didn't expect his grandfather to still be thinking of him even now. So he stepped forward and slowly explained to Chu Long. So Zhao Fan's cultivation has already reached the King realm? It seems my cultivation as an old man is already too weak. Chu Long was greatly surprised after hearing Chu Fan's words. He hadn't expected Chu Fan's cultivation to have reached the King realm, but he quickly came to terms with it. After all, Chu Fan had already established the Great Xia dynasty, so how could Chu Fan's strength be weak? The others, upon hearing Chu Fan's words, also stared at Chu Fan in shock. In the eyes of Feng Zhan and the others, besides shock, there was more joy. After all, they were naturally overjoyed to have such a formidable strength and talent in their younger generation. Meanwhile, Chu Tianxiong also relaxed and slowly took the talent enhancement pill. As he took the talent enhancement pill, spiritual qi continuously gathered around him, and soon, Chu Tianxiong was completely covered by spiritual qi. Subsequently, his entire cultivation directly broke through from the Grotto Heaven realm to the Spirit Roaming realm, and he even directly reached the late Shenyu realm, placing him in the same realm as Jia Qiming. Seeing this scene, Chu Long and the others also eagerly consumed the talent enhancement pills in their hands. Although they were already very old, who wouldn't want to improve their cultivation? Soon, wave after wave of spiritual qi gathered in the courtyard. At the same time, earth-shattering changes were happening around Chu Long and the others. Chu Long's cultivation, after taking the talent enhancement pill, directly rose from the half-step Faxiang realm to the Dharma aspect realm. Although his realm only increased from the half-step Faxiang realm to the early phase of the Dharma aspect realm, he was not far from the middle stage of the Dharma body realm at this moment, and the talent enhancement pill's main purpose was to improve his talent, not his cultivation realm. Jia Qiming also advanced from the late Shenyu realm to the half-step Faxiang realm, and his talent also improved to king rank. Chu Fan's maternal grandfather, Feng Zhan's cultivation, advanced to the early phase of the Dharma aspect realm. Feng Ziqi's cultivation realm also successfully broke through to the Grotto Heaven realm. The talent enhancement pill was most effective for those with lower realms, so this time, the greatest improvements in cultivation were seen in Feng Shiran and Feng Ziqi. One of them rose from the Meridian Opening realm to the Grotto Heaven realm, while the other rose from the Divine Power realm to the Grotto Heaven realm perfection. It can be said that this talent enhancement pill brought about significant improvements for all of them. I didn't expect to break through to the Dharma aspect realm so quickly. It seems I might even break through to the King realm in my lifetime. This is something I never thought of before. Chu Long, who had broken through to the Dharma aspect realm, opened his eyes and spoke with an incredulous expression. Perhaps at first, his ultimate goal was only to break through to the Dharma aspect realm, but now his goal had become the King realm. Moreover, after breaking through to the Dharma aspect realm, he seemed to have aged 10 years younger, and his originally gray hair had turned black. At the same time, the wrinkles on his face also began to decrease, and his entire person seemed full of vitality. Indeed, I didn't expect this old fellow to also break through to the half-step Faxiang realm, and I'm not far from the Dharma aspect realm. It seems I should also work hard to cultivate. Jia Qiming nodded after hearing Chu Long's words, and his eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. He hadn't expected that one day he would be able to break through to the legendary realm. I've also broken through to the Dharma aspect realm. Now I'll have enough time to play chess with you, two old fellows. Feng Zhan slowly walked over to the two and said, a strong smile in his eyes. A cultivator's lifespan increases to 1,000 years once they break through to the Dharma aspect realm. while cultivators of the spirit roaming realm only have a lifespan of 700 years. These are the maximum lifespans. For a general like Chu Long, who often fought in battles, his lifespan could not reach the limit of the spirit roaming realm, which is why Chu Long, who was less than 200 years old, looked so old. As for cultivators of the Grotto Heaven realm, their lifespan reaches 500 years, which is why Chu Tianxiong, at the Grotto Heaven realm, appeared to be only a middle-aged man in his 30s. And now, Chu Tianxiong, who had successfully broken through to the spirit roaming realm, looked to be under 27 or 28 years old. This was the benefit brought by the realm. Indeed, but I'm afraid we'll have to seriously cultivate next. After all, this old man is still waiting to hold Zhao Fan's child. This fellow Zhao Fan doesn't find a wife, making this old man wait for so long. Chu Long nodded after hearing Feng Zhan's words. Then he looked at Chu Fan. Although his words carried a hint of reproach, when he looked at Chu Fan, his heart was still filled with concern. That's right, Zhao Fan, you're not young anymore. Shouldn't you establish an empress? I think that girl Xiao Zi is not bad, and her status is even higher than yours. More importantly, that girl likes you. Shouldn't you try to sound her out? Feng Shiran immediately reacted after hearing Chu Long's words, so she slowly walked over to Chu Fan, took his hand, and said, Mother, there's no hurry right now. I'll talk about it when I take over the entire eastern domain. Besides, Xiao Zi is a quasi-saintess of a holy land. How could she possibly fancy someone from my eastern domain? Chu Fan hadn't expected that even after transmigration to this world, he would still be urged to marry, so he spoke somewhat helplessly to Feng Shiran in front of him. Chapter 200 Feng Shiran's Orders, Goodbye Luo Tianyi. Although Chu Fan said this, he never held any respect for the so-called Holy Land. After all, possessing the system, his future achievements certainly wouldn't be inferior to the Holy Land. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Feng Shiran also realized the situation. Only then did she remember that Xiao Zi came from Holy Land in the central region. So even if that girl agreed, their Holy Land might not necessarily agree. If that girl won't work, then what about Qing Yao? I think this girl is quite good. Feng Shiran then turned her gaze towards Qing Yao, who was standing beside Chu Fan. She was also very fond of Qing Yao. After all, Qing Yao's appearance and personality were very much to her liking, and Qing Yao had always followed Chu Fan. After hearing Feng Shiran's words, a blush appeared on Qing Yao's face, and she immediately lowered her head, not daring to look at Chu Fan. Although Qing Yao was a summoned character, besides her loyalty to Chu Fan, she naturally had her own feelings. Towards Chu Fan, besides respect, she also harbored different emotions. No matter what, you must establish Qing Yao as an imperial consort. That way, others in the Great Xia dynasty won't say that you, the emperor, don't even have a concubine. Furthermore, the most important thing for a country is to have an excellent successor. Only then will your subordinates work loyally for you. Chu Tianxiong said this to Chu Fan with a look of amusement. This was the first time he had seen Chu Fan display such a helpless expression. However, what he said was the truth. What the generals who followed the emperor to conquer the land valued most was the emperor's successor. After all, no matter how powerful the emperor was, if his successor was weak, he would be unable to manage the country well. At this moment, not only Chu Tianxiong but also Chu Long and the others looked towards Chu Fan. Although they didn't say much, Chu Fan could tell what they wanted to say from their eyes. Qing Yao, if I establish you as an imperial consort, would you be willing? Seeing everyone's gazes, Chu Fan felt helpless. He slowly raised his head, looked at Qing Yao in front of him, and asked. Qing Yao agrees. You can just announce it when you return. As soon as Chu Fan's voice fell, Feng Shiran immediately stepped forward, holding Qing Yao's hand, and said. Chu Fan felt somewhat helpless seeing this scene. After all, these were his mother's words, so how could he possibly disagree? Afterwards, Chu Fan had dinner with Chu Tianxiong and the others. Of course, during the meal, Feng Shiran kept pulling Qing Yao to her side, whispering who knows what. However, Qing Yao didn't dare to look up at Chu Fan throughout the banquet. It wasn't until very late that Chu Fan left the small courtyard. As for Qing Yao, she was kept there by Feng Shiran, leaving Chu Fan to return to the imperial palace alone and helplessly. Upon returning to the imperial palace, Chu Fan felt extremely helpless because he was the only one in the vast imperial palace, making him feel incredibly lonely. When Qing Yao was around before, he didn't have this feeling, but now that Qing Yao wasn't by his side, he felt it intensely. Early the next morning, just as Chu Fan got up, Su Chu came before him, saying someone wanted to see him. Although Chu Fan felt somewhat surprised, he still followed Su Chu to the main hall. Although the Great Xia dynasty had just been established, Chu Fan was not busy. Because he had summoned several great talents, he handed over all the affairs of the Great Xia dynasty to them. Now, he only needed to sit and wait for the national destiny value to increase slowly. Arriving inside the main hall, Chu Fan didn't expect that the ones who came to see him this time were Luo Tianyi and Luo Qingyun. As soon as she appeared in the hall, Luo Qingyun immediately rushed to his side. "Brother Chu Fan, Qingyun finally gets to see you." Luo Qingyun looked up at Chu Fan in front of her with a happy expression. "I also didn't expect to see little Qingyun here. When did little Qingyun come to my great Xia dynasty?" Chu Fan gently squatted down, looking at Luo Qingyun in front of him with a smile. Then he reached out and rubbed Luo Qingyun's small face. When he first met Luo Qingyun, Chu Fan might have been interested because of Luo Qingyun's physique, but now he treated Luo Qingyun just like his own biological sister. "Big sister and I came to the great Xia dynasty a long time ago. We were there when Brother Chu Fan established the great Xia dynasty, but Big Sister said Brother Chu Fan was busy during this period, so we didn't come to bother him." Luo Qingyun raised her little head and spoke to Chu Fan. Her eyes also filled with curiosity. After hearing Luo Qingyun's words, Chu Fan looked up in surprise towards Luo Tianyi. At that time, he was only focused on resolving the thunder in the sky and hadn't noticed the presence of Luo Qingyun and the others. He hadn't expected Luo Tianyi and Luo Qingyun to have arrived so early. Miss Luo has grown a lot during this time, and her cultivation has actually reached the divine power realm. Chu Fan looked at Luo Tianyi in front of him and spoke slowly. Although Luo Tianyi seemed very delicate, her heart was very strong, and her talent was not weak, so she managed to break through to the divine power realm during this period. "Tianyi cannot compare to your majesty. Your majesty is an existence capable of moving freely within the lightning tribulation. I fear that women across the entire world now regard your majesty as their ideal husband." After hearing Chu Fan's words, Luo Tianyi spoke softly, though a blush appeared on her face, making her look even cuter. "Then does Miss Luo regard this young master as her ideal husband?" Hearing Luo Tianyi's words, Chu Fan suddenly became interested. He led Luo Qingyun and slowly approached Luo Tianyi, speaking to her. His entire body leaned towards Luo Tianyi, causing the aura on his body, which was like a scorching sun, to head directly towards Luo Tianyi. "Yo, your majesty is naturally a great hero in Tianyi's eyes." Feeling this scorching sun-like chi, Luo Tianyi instantly froze. She didn't know why she felt extremely comfortable being near Chu Fan, but at this moment, she still replied to Chu Fan haltingly. "Miss Luo can just call me Chu Fan. But how about Miss Luo just comes directly to my imperial palace and becomes an imperial consort?" Looking at the flushed Luo Tianyi in front of him, Chu Fan suddenly uttered this sentence, somewhat surprised by his own words after saying them. "All right." After hearing Chu Fan's words, Luo Tianyi couldn't help but say all right. Then, realizing what she had said, she lowered her head, not daring to speak further. Chapter 201. Confirming relationship with Luo Tianyi, difficult to awaken physique. Chu Fan had not expected Luo Tianyi to agree so readily, so he just stared blankly at the stunning Luo Tianyi standing before him. Luo Tianyi, however, did not dare to raise her head to look at Chu Fan, and the entire main hall fell into silence for a moment. Is Brother Chu Fan going to marry elder sister? Just then, Luo Qingyun, whom Chu Fan was holding, slowly spoke. Her voice seemed magical, directly entering the ears of Chu Fan and Luo Tianyi. Chu Fan also snapped back to reality at this moment, and he looked at Luo Tianyi before him with a hint of surprise. "Since Tianyi agrees, then we shall choose an auspicious day for Tianyi to become the imperial consort of my great Xia dynasty." Chu Fan naturally had no regrets at this moment. He certainly had favorable feelings toward Luo Tianyi before him, so he spoke slowly to her. "Tianyi will obey your majesty." Luo Tianyi still did not raise her head at this time. Instead, she spoke softly to Chu Fan. Her voice was so quiet that the two people present could barely hear it. If Chu Fan had not been a King Realm cultivator, he might not have been able to hear Luo Tianyi's words. "Tianyi, I have 2 medicinal pills here, pills that can enhance talent. You and Qingyun should each take one to see the effect." Chu Fan suddenly took out the talent enhancement pill from the system space at this time, poured out 2, and handed them to Luo Tianyi and Luo Qingyun. Chu Fan had just communicated with the system inside the system space. Luo Qingyun needed powerful treasures to achieve talent awakening, but Chu Fan wanted to try using the talent enhancement pill to see if it could fully trigger Luo Qingyun's talent awakening. After all, the talent enhancement pill only cost 10,000 national destiny value, so he would not feel distressed even if it failed. Although Luo Tianyi's cultivation talent was decent, it was far from reaching king rank, so the talent enhancement pill was still very useful for her. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Luo Tianyi immediately accepted the talent enhancement pill. She did not refuse Chu Fan's kindness at this time. After all, Luo Tianyi knew that Chu Fan's cultivation had reached a level she could not imagine, so she naturally would not miss such an opportunity. If she missed this chance again, she feared it would be difficult to keep up with Chu Fan's pace. Luo Qingyun also curiously held the talent enhancement pill in her hand. Then, she raised her small head and stared at Chu Fan with curiosity. Seeing her appearance, Chu Fan nodded at her. Subsequently, Luo Qingyun and Luo Tianyi directly consumed the talent enhancement pill. The moment the talent enhancement pill was consumed, spiritual qi fluctuations appeared around Luo Tianyi. Following this, a massive suction force emerged from her, continuously absorbing the surrounding spiritual qi. Soon, Luo Tianyi's cultivation directly achieved a breakthrough from the divine power realm to the grotto heaven realm, reaching the grotto heaven realm late stage. She was not far from grotto heaven realm perfection. As for Luo Qingyun, dark streams of qi appeared around her, containing terrifying devouring power. The surrounding spiritual qi was quickly swallowed by these streams of qi. However, despite this, the qi around Luo Qingyun did not change much, and her cultivation did not increase at all. It seems that even the talent enhancement pill cannot completely trigger the awakening of her physique. Seeing this scene, Chu Fan naturally knew why this was happening to Luo Qingyun. He frowned and thought to himself. While Luo Qingyun continuously devoured the surrounding spiritual qi, Luo Tianyi had also finished enhancing her talent and realm. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at Chu Fan before her with a joyful expression. I advanced by more than one major realm this time. I believe it won't be long before I can achieve a breakthrough to the grotto heaven perfection realm. Luo Tianyi looked at Chu Fan happily and spoke, her face beaming with a smile that made her look even more beautiful. Not bad. With your current strength, you are likely among the peak prodigies in the entire eastern region. After hearing Luo Tianyi's words, Chu Fan lightly scratched her nose and spoke slowly. Chu Fan was not wrong. Given Luo Tianyi's current strength, she was considered a top-tier existence among the prodigies in the entire eastern region. Of course, this was because the prodigies in the eastern region were too weak. If they were in the central region, Luo Tianyi's talent would still not qualify her as a true prodigy. After all, Xiao Zi, the quasi-saintess of Taishan Holy Land, had already reached the perfected Dharma aspect realm at an age similar to Luo Tianyi's. Xiao Zi had successfully raised her cultivation to the perfected Dharma aspect realm during this period, but she was still far from the king realm. Really? Then how far behind are I compared to you? Luo Tianyi immediately smiled after hearing Chu Fan's words, and then she looked at Chu Fan expectantly. My cultivation has already reached the king realm. If you want to catch up to me, I'm afraid it will take a very, very long time. Chu Fan was instantly speechless after hearing Luo Tianyi's words. Leaving aside the fact that his physique was the innate Dao Body, just having the system, his cheat, allowed his cultivation to increase without limit. So how could Luo Tianyi possibly catch up to him? However, he naturally could not discourage Luo Tianyi at this time, which was why he told such a kind lie. Although Luo Tianyi felt a bit disappointed after hearing Chu Fan's words, she did not show it. Instead, she slowly turned her gaze toward Luo Qingyun, who was busy devouring the spiritual qi on the ground. Can Qingyun's inability to cultivate be resolved this time? Looking at Luo Qingyun, who was devouring the surrounding spiritual qi, a hint of expectation appeared on Luo Tianyi's face. Because they did not know Luo Qingyun's physique, they all assumed she could not cultivate, which was why Luo Tianyi loved Luo Qingyun so much. After all, if Luo Qingyun could not cultivate, her lifespan would not exceed 100 years, and the gap between them would be too vast. Qingyun is not unable to cultivate. Rather, the physique she possesses is too powerful, so she needs enough resources to fully trigger the awakening of her physique. Only then will she be able to cultivate. Chu Fan spoke slowly after hearing Luo Tianyi's words. After finishing, he still looked at Luo Qingyun with anticipation. Because the physique Luo Qingyun possessed was indeed extremely heaven-defying. As long as she successfully achieved physique awakening, Luo Qingyun's strength would definitely increase rapidly. In fact, as long as she had enough treasures, her cultivation could quickly rise to the king realm or even higher. This did not mean that Luo Qingyun's talent was higher than Chu Fan's. After all, even without the system, Chu Fan possessed the innate Dao Body, which was also a reward from the system. Furthermore, the cultivation technique Chu Fan cultivated was the heaven-swallowing demonic art, a demonic technique created by Empress Ruthless to evolve the devouring physique. Chapter 202 The Two Great Dynasties Send Out Armies. Chu Fan's response. Time passed quickly. Several hours went by in a flash, but Luo Qingyun's physique had still not successfully undergone awakening. However, this time the talent enhancement pill raised the power of her physical body to a certain degree, and she was not far from truly achieving the awakening of her physique. Brother Chu Fan, am I very stupid? I wasted Brother Chu Fan's medicinal pill and still can't cultivate. Luo Qingyun looked dejected after opening her eyes. She had not expected that she still couldn't cultivate, and moreover, she had wasted Chu Fan's medicinal pill. Qingyun, the reason you cannot cultivate is because your physique is too powerful, so it has not yet undergone awakening. Once your physique truly undergoes awakening, your cultivation will catch up quickly. After hearing Luo Qingyun's words, Chu Fan gently pinched Luo Qingyun's face, and then he spoke to her with a serious expression. Is that true, Brother Chu Fan? Luo Qingyun, whose eyes were originally filled with disappointment, instantly lifted her head after hearing Chu Fan's words, staring at Chu Fan with her lively eyes. That's right. Your physique is considered the strongest in the entire eastern region. Even in the central region, your physique would not be weak. After hearing Luo Qingyun's words, Chu Fan spoke leisurely to Luo Qingyun. After speaking, he didn't forget to pinch Luo Qingyun's little face again. Upon hearing Chu Fan's words, Luo Qingyun instantly burst into laughter, casting everything that just happened to the back of her mind. Next, Chu Fan brought Luo Tianyi and Luo Qingyun to Feng Shiran. After introducing Luo Tianyi and Luo Qingyun to Feng Shiran, Chu Fan returned to the Imperial Palace. Meanwhile, the entire prince's residence began preparing for Chu Fan's official conferment of an imperial consort, as this was the first time an imperial consort had been conferred since the establishment of the Great Xia dynasty. Just as the Great Xia dynasty was bustling with excitement, the Tianqing dynasty on the other side did not intend to let the Great Xia dynasty continue its festivities. At this time, the emperor of the Tianqing dynasty and the emperor of the Fengyun dynasty reached an agreement. Consequently, the two imperial dynasties deployed over 2 million troops, marching majestically towards the Great Xia dynasty. Simultaneously, these 2 million-plus troops instantly attracted the attention of many forces in the eastern region. Chu Fan, who was in the imperial palace in Chang'an City, naturally received this news due to the existence of the net of Luo and the embroidered uniform guard. I didn't expect the Tianqing dynasty and the Fengyun dynasty to be so impatient to make a move against my Great Xia dynasty. Inside the imperial palace hall, Chu Fan frowned after hearing the news transmitted by the net of Luo. He hadn't expected that while he hadn't gone looking for trouble with the Tianqing dynasty and the Fengyun dynasty, these two imperial dynasties had come looking for trouble with him. Your Majesty, your subordinate general requests permission to lead troops to destroy them. Chen Jibao immediately stepped forward, saluted Chu Fan, and spoke, his eyes filled entirely with battle intent. Your Majesty, your subordinate general requests to fight. After hearing Chu Fan's words, the other generals also stepped out one after another, requesting to fight Chu Fan. Similar battle intent emanated from their bodies. Your Majesty, this battle might be the starting point for us to unify the entire eastern region. Just then, Fang Xinling slowly stepped forward and spoke. After speaking, his eyes were filled with a difficult-to-discern glint. Xinling means that after we directly wipe out the armies of the two imperial dynasties in this battle, we should immediately dispatch troops against the two imperial dynasties? Chu Fan naturally understood Fang Xuanling's meaning at this moment, so he spoke leisurely, a subtle smile appearing in his eyes. Indeed, since the two dynasties want to attack our Great Xia dynasty, why should our Great Xia dynasty hold back? After all, the army of our Great Xia dynasty can now take down the two imperial dynasties. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Fang Xinling immediately nodded, and then he leisurely swept his gaze across the generals in the hall. In his view, it would be extremely easy for the Great Xia dynasty to take down the two imperial dynasties now. In fact, not only did he find it easy, but the other generals of the Great Xia dynasty also felt that victory in this major battle would be very simple for them. After all, the strength of the Great Xia dynasty had already far surpassed the strength of the imperial dynasties in the eastern region. Your Majesty, this subject feels that Lord Fang's words are reasonable. If the two imperial dynasties intend to violate our Great Xia dynasty, then it will be their death knell. Guojia, who had remained silent, also stepped forward at this time and spoke directly to Chu Fan. At the same time, a murderous look flashed in his eyes. As the strategist of the Great Xia dynasty, he naturally hoped that the Great Xia dynasty could unify the entire eastern region and even the entire world. Now that there was an opportunity, Guojia naturally couldn't miss it. Your Majesty, this subject also believes this is our chance to take down the entire eastern region. Wang Ming also stepped forward at this time and spoke to Chu Fan. Although he usually appeared very steady, he seemed a bit excited at this moment. Good. Since all of you believe that we should take down the two imperial dynasties in this major battle, then let us exhaust the military strength of the Great Xia dynasty in this battle and completely seize the two imperial dynasties. After hearing everyone's words, Chu Fan knew that this opportunity was extremely rare, so he slapped the dragon throne, stood up, and spoke. Chen Jibao and Yu Fei, heed my command. After speaking, Chu Fan slowly turned his gaze toward Chen Jibao and Yu Fei. Your subordinate general is present. After hearing Chu Fan's words, the two quickly cupped their hands toward Chu Fan. At the same time, they clearly understood what Chu Fan wanted them to do, and their eyes were filled with eager, fervent light. I command the two of you to lead the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry and the Yu family army to confront the Fengyan Dynasty's army. Furthermore, after dealing with the Fengyan Dynasty's army, immediately launch an attack against the Fengyan Dynasty. I grant you 1,000,000 troops this time. I hope the two generals will not disappoint me. Chu Fan looked at Chen Jibao and Yu Fei below and spoke slowly. After speaking, he looked at Chen Jibao and Yu Fei with anticipation. Your subordinate general and the other general will definitely take down the entire Fengyan dynasty at the fastest speed. Chen Jibao and Yu Fei exchanged glances, then spoke to Chu Fan with extremely firm tones. Zilong, you will lead the White Horse Volunteers to act as the vanguard general for the two generals. Chu Fan nodded after hearing their words, and then he turned his gaze toward Zhao Zilong and spoke leisurely to Zhao Zilong. Although both Yu Fei and Chen Jibao had suitable vanguard generals under their command, Zhao Zilong was more fitting to serve as a vanguard general this time. Your subordinate general will definitely live up to your majesty's expectations. Zhao Zilong had not expected that he would have a chance to go on an expedition this time, so he quickly stepped out and knelt before Chu Fan. His eyes were full of excitement. As a general, who wouldn't want to go on an expedition? The saying that a general dies in 100 battles is not just for show. Chapter 2, Ode 3 The Great Xia Dynasty sends troops. Chang'an is in turmoil. At this moment, the other generals looked at Yu Fei and the other two with envy, but there was still one imperial dynasty left, and they all had a chance to send troops. Qin Xiong, Yang Yi, where are you? At this moment, Chu Fan looked at Qin Xiong and Yang Yi again, and then he slowly spoke to them. Your subordinate general is here. After hearing Chu Fan's words, the two instantly understood Chu Fan's command, so they quickly stepped forward and knelt before Chu Fan. I command you two to lead your respective armies to confront the Tianxing Dynasty's army. At the same time, after defeating the Tianxing Dynasty's army, directly launch an attack on the Tianxing Dynasty. Furthermore, this time, I will also dispatch a 1,000,000-strong army to accompany you two generals. Chu Fan looked at Qin Xiong and Yang Yi below and spoke slowly. After speaking, he looked at Lu Bu below again, and then directly said to Lu Bu, this time, General Lu Bu will be the vanguard for the two generals. I believe General Lu Bu will absolutely not disappoint us. Your subordinate general will absolutely not tarnish the prestige of our Great Xia dynasty. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Lu Bu also hurriedly stepped forward and knelt before Chu Fan, his eyes filled with a terrifying battle intent. Your subordinate generals accept the command. As for Qin Xiong and Yang Yi, they cupped their hands towards Chu Fan, their eyes filled with excitement. As for the Mengyuan dynasty, let Qingdu and Guo Jia's courtesy name go there. You two go and see if the Mengyuan dynasty intends to go to war with our Great Xia dynasty or surrender to our Great Xia dynasty. After Chu Fan finished speaking, he looked at Yuan Qingdu and Guo Jia below. He was still a bit helpless about this last imperial dynasty. After all, he had just met Mengyu of the Mengyuan dynasty a while ago, and also learned about the Mengyuan emperor's thought for Mengyu. However, Chu Fan knew that his Great Xia dynasty did not need to join forces with the Mengyuan dynasty, so he directly rejected the Mengyuan emperor's idea. But if he wanted to unify the entire eastern region now, he had to incorporate the Mengyuan dynasty into his territory, so he was still hesitant about the Mengyuan dynasty. After all, he didn't have a very good excuse to directly attack the Mengyuan dynasty. There was no enmity between the Mengyuan dynasty and their Great Xia dynasty. Your subject will absolutely persuade the Mengyuan dynasty. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Guo Jia also spoke to Chu Fan with confidence. He had full confidence in the Mengyuan dynasty. What's more, Guo Jia believed that their two armies would quickly resolve the two great imperial dynasties, and it would be even easier to persuade the Mengyuan dynasty then. Yuan Qingdu bowed to Chu Fan and then stood quietly in place, naturally knowing that his main purpose on this trip was to protect Guo Jia and display his strength. He didn't need to do anything else. With the arrangements for this expedition team made, this morning court finally dispersed. However, after the morning court dispersed, the entire Chang'an city began to operate. After all, mobilizing several million troops would certainly alarm the entire Chang'an city. In just a few days, several million troops were successfully mobilized. Several million troops stood majestically outside Chang'an City, and the aura of several million troops instantly seemed to envelop the entire Chang'an City. Chu Fan, standing on the city wall, was very satisfied to see this scene. I await the triumphant return of all generals and soldiers in Chang'an City. Looking at the several million troops below, Chu Fan said in a loud voice. His voice quickly spread throughout Chang'an City, and of course, it also reached the ears of these soldiers. Thank you, Your Majesty. The several million troops also dismounted one after another and saluted in Chu Fan's direction, their voices reverberating throughout Chang'an City. As Chu Fan waved his hand at the several million troops below, they then uniformly returned to their war horses and galloped forward. Soon, their figures disappeared outside Chang'an City. The majestic momentum of their departure, however, had not yet dissipated, still lingering in Chang'an City. Looking at the several million disappearing troops, a hint of anticipation appeared in Chu Fan's eyes. He then slowly led Dian Wei and Su Chu, who were by his side, back to the imperial palace. Dian Wei and Su Chu were now Chu Fan's personal bodyguards. Although Chu Fan's cultivation was higher than theirs, it was impossible for him to handle everything himself. Therefore, he kept the two by his side. And while Chu Fan was heading to the imperial palace, the entire Chang'an City became lively. Although the army in Chang'an City had been mobilizing for the past few days, the cultivators and common people of Chang'an City did not know Chu Fan's true intentions. Only now did they clearly understand Chu Fan's true intentions. I didn't expect our great Xia dynasty to send troops again and directly mobilize several million troops. It seems that this time, Your Majesty plans to destroy which imperial dynasty? Perhaps Your Majesty intends to destroy the Tianxin dynasty this time. After all, the Tianxin dynasty has always been our mortal enemy, and last time they even sent troops to harass Your Majesty. Now that Your Majesty has the opportunity, he naturally wants to destroy them. If our great Xia dynasty destroys the Tianxin dynasty this time, then won't our great Xia dynasty's strength become the strongest imperial dynasty in the eastern region? Our great Xia dynasty's current strength is already considered the strongest imperial dynasty in the eastern region. After all, even the Fengyan dynasty may not be as powerful as our great Xia dynasty. It's a pity my cultivation is too weak, otherwise I would also participate in this great war. The cultivators and common people of Chang'an City also began to discuss at this time, but they still had full confidence in whether the great Xia dynasty's troops could resolve the battle this time. The strength displayed by the great Xia dynasty, or rather Chu Fan, far exceeded their imagination. Many cultivators even believed that the current great Xia dynasty was already the #1 imperial dynasty in the eastern region. However, what they most anticipated was what extent the great Xia dynasty's territory would reach after this great war ended. It seems I was right. This fellow Chu Fan is just too impatient. He must be launching the final attack on the Tianxin dynasty now, right? In the prince's mansion, Jia Qiming slowly said to Chu Long, Chu Tianxiong, and others in front of him. Over the past few days, they had naturally felt the changes in Chang'an City, so at that time, they began to guess whether Chu Fan was going to send troops to conquer other imperial dynasties. And now, Chu Fan's actions had just confirmed their initial suspicions. Chapter 204, Xiao Zi's Worries. See Clan Enemies Attack. If Fan doesn't have absolute confidence, he definitely won't send troops easily. It seems the great Xia dynasty's territory is about to expand again. Chu Long nodded in agreement after hearing him, then raised his head proudly. As Chu Fan's grandson, he was naturally proud of Chu Fan's actions. After all, his grandson was so powerful. What was wrong with him being a little proud? I'm still hoping that fellow Fan can completely unify the entire eastern region. Chu Tianxiong also did not hide the pride in his heart, looking at the sky proudly as he spoke. The others fell silent after hearing him, but a hint of anticipation could be seen in their eyes. It seems I was right. That fellow Chu Fan really can't stay idle. Perhaps it won't be long before he unifies the entire eastern region, but after unifying it, he will likely face the Heavenly Dao Alliance. In another courtyard of the Chang'an Imperial Palace, Xiao Zi's guardian showed a hint of emotion on his face, but soon he thought of the Heavenly Dao Alliance's terror, and thus let out a heavy sigh. The Heavenly Dao Alliance shouldn't attack him. After all, Chu Fan hasn't violated the rules set by the Heavenly Dao Alliance, and the Heavenly Dao Alliance is also restrained by so many holy lands in our central region, so they shouldn't act easily. Xiao Zi naturally understood her guardian's meaning. Although a hint of worry appeared on her face, Xiao Zi still held a glimmer of hope in her heart. After all, even if Chu Fan unified the entire eastern region now, he hadn't violated the Heavenly Dao Alliance's rules. Moreover, the Heavenly Dao Alliance was currently restrained by the holy lands of the central region, so it was impossible for them to send excessively powerful figures to deal with Chu Fan. That's hard to say. After all, those holy lands in the central region won't provoke the Heavenly Dao Alliance for Chu Fan, and I believe those holy lands in the central region also don't wish to see Chu Fan's great Xia Imperial Dynasty rise. Xiao Zi's guardian still showed a hint of worry on his face after hearing her words. After all, only he had truly witnessed the expressions of those holy lands in the central region, so he naturally knew that without significant benefits, those holy lands in the central region would absolutely not clash with the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Moreover, those holy lands in the central region naturally couldn't stand by and watch the great Xia Imperial Dynasty rise. Of course, their Taishan Holy Lands view was different from those holy lands. Aside from the relationship between Chu Fan and Xiao Zi, just the relationship between Chu Fan and their Taishan Holy Land Saint was enough for their Taishan Holy Land to fully support the rise of the great Xia Imperial Dynasty. When their Taishan Holy Land and the great Xia Imperial Dynasty joined forces, wouldn't they become even stronger? What's more, he couldn't see through Chu Fan. Chu Fan was simply too mysterious. Even if there was no connection between the Taishan Holy Land and the great Xia Imperial Dynasty, he wouldn't want to provoke Chu Fan. I believe this fellow Chu Fan can create a miracle. Xiao Zi looked towards the Imperial Palace with confidence at this moment. She had blind faith in Chu Fan, but then she seemed to think of something, and a furious expression appeared on her face. Just as Chang'an City dispatched its troops, several figures also appeared in the eastern region at this time. The qi emanating from these figures had reached at least the King realm. Is this the eastern region? The spiritual energy is really weak. What right do the natives here have to kill 7 blades? The leading middle-aged man felt the depleted spiritual energy around him and spoke with disbelief, a hint of disdain appearing on his face. Although the spiritual energy here is very depleted, we must not underestimate our enemy this time. After all, how could someone who can resolve an elder's clone be a simple person? Another middle-aged man beside him stepped forward and spoke leisurely at this moment. However, although he said this, no solemn expression could be seen on his face, as if the enemies here were nothing to him. I heard the Grand Elder say that the cultivator who killed his clone was only a late King realm cultivator, and in that Imperial Dynasty, the strongest cultivator is only a middle true King realm. So why should we fear them? The middle-aged man who had just spoken continued to speak at this moment, and the mocking and disdain on his face became even more pronounced. Yes, Brother Foam is right. This time we have 3 true kings and 6 kings. How could a small eastern region Imperial Dynasty be our opponent? At this moment, another middle-aged man in the team, exuding the chi of a true king, slowly stepped forward and spoke. After speaking, he glanced at the surrounding environment with disdain. Let's go. We'll resolve this Imperial Dynasty as quickly as possible and avenge the Grand Elder. The middle-aged man who had just spoken also said directly at this moment. After speaking, the group headed directly towards the Great Xia Imperial Dynasty. Just as the figures were continuously approaching the Great Xia Imperial Dynasty, Deng Taiye of the Hall of Worship suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze seemed to pierce through time and space, looking towards the direction of those figures. Then, Deng Taiye quickly disappeared from his spot. When he reappeared, he was already in the Imperial Palace, and his figure also appeared before Chu Fan. Deng Taiye greets your majesty. Looking at Chu Fan before him, Deng Taiye spoke leisurely. Sword God, what brings you here? Chu Fan hadn't expected Deng Taiye to appear before him, so he asked Deng Taiye with some confusion. There are a few rats heading towards our great Xia Imperial Dynasty, and these rats consist of 3 true kings and 6 kings. Deng Taiye replied directly to Chu Fan after hearing his words. Has Sword God investigated their origins? Chu Fan hadn't expected that 3 true kings and 6 kings were heading towards the great Xia Imperial Dynasty, but it seemed like the eastern region couldn't produce so many powerful cultivators right now, so he asked Deng Taiye with some confusion. Their true forms are Yao beasts, and they are Yao beasts from the sea. Deng Taiye cupped his hands to Chu Fan and spoke leisurely at this moment. However, from his expression, he didn't seem to put these Yao beasts in his eyes. So it's them. Sword God, just go and resolve them directly. Upon hearing Deng Taiye's words, Chu Fan instantly understood who these cultivators were, because his system panel still had a mission, and the mission was to resolve the cultivators attacking from the Sea Clan. He figured it must be these guys. Chapter 205, Sea Clan Monsters Attack. Deng Taiye appears. For Chu Fan, these Sea Clan enemies were nothing. After all, their cultivation was only at the true king realm, and even the strongest among this batch of enemies was only at the true king realm. As for those king realm enemies, Chu Fan paid even less attention to them. After all, the Great Xia Dynasty currently possessed a saint-level expert, so what were mere king realm cultivators in his presence? Upon hearing Chu Fan's words, the peach blossom sword god Dangtai instantly vanished from his sight. Although minor King Realm and true King Realm cultivators were too weak for him, since Chu Fan had given him the order, Dangtai naturally wouldn't ignore it. Moreover, slaughtering a few true King Realm cultivators was an easy task for him to accomplish. Meanwhile, on the other side, the true King Realm cultivators and the King Realm Yao beasts from the Sea Clan had yet to realize that they had entered the countdown phase of their lives. The group of Sea Clan cultivators were currently looking down arrogantly at Chang'an City ahead. At this moment, they didn't take Chang'an City seriously at all. In fact, they believed the entire Great Xia dynasty could be easily destroyed. However, they were unaware that their fate had already been sealed. Is this Chang'an City of the newly established Great Xia dynasty in the eastern regions? It certainly looks more magnificent than the capitals of the other three great dynasties. In the sky not far from Chang'an City, a true King Realm expert from the Sea Clan spoke with some emotion as he looked down at the city. As a true King Realm cultivator of the Western Region's Sea Clan, he had naturally seen other cities, including the capitals of the other three great dynasties in the eastern regions. But he felt that none of their capitals could compare to Chang'an City. The others nodded in agreement after hearing his words. Originally, Chang'an City was the capital of the Great Yan dynasty, so perhaps the former Chang'an City could not match the capital of the Fengyan dynasty. But compared to the capitals of the other two imperial dynasties, it was certainly not inferior. Furthermore, this time Guojia and the others had made great efforts to construct Chang'an City, so the current Chang'an City naturally surpassed the capitals of the other three dynasties. Although Chang'an City looks extremely luxurious, it is about to be destroyed by us this time. It's a pity, isn't it? Another true King Realm member of the Sea Clan licked the corner of his mouth and spoke, his eyes filled with excited light, mixed with streaks of wickedness that made him look extremely evil. The other King Realm sea demons also became excited upon hearing his words, then looked playfully at Chang'an City ahead. At this moment, they acted as if they had already conquered Chang'an City. A few minor sea demons dare to be so contemptuous of my Great Xia dynasty, truly courting death. Just as excitement appeared on their faces, a commanding voice drifted down from the sky, accompanied by terrifying pressure. This instantly made the group of sea demons feel a terrifying, oppressive force. Who is playing tricks here? Get out now. When a true King Realm sea demon from the Sea Clan felt this terrifying pressure, a solemn expression appeared on his face. He then slowly spoke while looking at the space in front of him. However, it was evident that he was full of apprehension toward this voice. After all, a mere trace of chi had made him feel a fatal threat. How could such an existence be weak? The other two true King Realm sea demons were also constantly searching the surroundings for potential dangers. As for the remaining King Realm sea demons, they fearfully surveyed their surroundings, as they were terrified of the chi they had just felt. After all, a mere trace of chi had suppressed them so much that they could not muster any resistance in their hearts. How could such an expert be someone they could withstand? Do a few minor King Realm sea demons plus 3 true King Realm sea demons dare to threaten my Great Xia dynasty? It seems the reputation of my Great Xia dynasty has yet to spread far enough. Just as this group of sea demons solemnly surveyed their surroundings, the voice slowly drifted in again from afar. This voice seemed not to exist between heaven and earth, yet also seemed to be traveling across countless spans of time and space. This instantly made the group of sea demons from the Sea Clan feel chills, as the unknown is always the most terrifying thing. However, just as this group of sea demons felt fear, the figure of an ordinary middle-aged man slowly appeared before them. The man was holding an old wooden box, and his entire demeanor was like that of a completely ordinary person. Nevertheless, this group of sea demons solemnly stared at this seemingly ordinary middle-aged man. How could someone who appeared here be an ordinary person? The middle-aged man holding the wooden box slowly approached the sea demons. His footsteps were very light, yet every step landed perfectly in the sky, as if an invisible staircase existed beneath his feet. He walked toward the sea demons of the Sea Clan, completely unperturbed. "Your Excellency, who are you, and what is your purpose in coming here this time?" The true King-grade sea demon leading the Sea Clan group slowly asked the middle-aged man who was walking toward them. However, a solemn expression appeared on the face of the true King-grade sea demon from the Sea Clan. At this moment, he couldn't sense any chi from the middle-aged man in front of him. It was as if the middle-aged man standing before him truly was an ordinary person, but the true King Realm sea demon of the Sea Clan did not believe this man was ordinary. The other sea demons of the Sea Clan also looked at the middle-aged man with serious expressions. "I am Deng Tai of the Great Xia dynasty, sent here by the command of my lord to execute you all." The middle-aged man spoke calmly while looking at the sea demons, but his eyes were filled with disdain, as if the people in front of him were not worth his effort to speak. So you are a person of the great Xia dynasty. If that is the case, then die. Upon hearing Deng Tai's words, a true king-grade sea demon from the Sea clan instantly understood Deng Tai's identity. Thereupon, he quickly slammed a punch toward Deng Tai. A terrifying force immediately swept through the entire space, and he himself transformed into a blue streak of light, rushing toward Deng Tai. Upon seeing this scene, Deng Tai gently shook his head, as if he felt the strength of the sea demon before him was too weak. Chapter 206 Deng Tai easily kills the enemy and receives the system reward. Then, Deng Tai lightly pointed a finger at the sea monster in front of him. This seemingly casual finger carried an overwhelming power, as if it wanted to crush the entire sky. At the same time, an unstoppable chi directly emanated from Deng Tai's body, and the terrifyingly sharp sword intent carried in his finger just now instantly pierced through the surrounding air. Even the surrounding rules could not withstand this sword intent. Subsequently, this sword intent, with an unstoppable dominance, surged towards the blue light in front of Deng Tai. The other sea monsters, seeing this scene, instantly showed an incredible expression in their eyes. They had not expected such a terrifying dominance from a casual flick of the middle-aged man's finger. Then, Deng Tai's sharp sword intent directly pierced through the blue light in front of him. As a scream rang out, numerous blue liquids flowed from the blue light. The next second, a blue sea monster exploded in midair. In an instant, its body turned into countless fragments, falling towards the earth, and at the same time, this sea monster completely lost the symbol of life. Evidently, Deng Tai's sword strike just now directly eliminated a true King Realm sea monster. At this moment, the entire world seemed to fall silent. The remaining sea monsters, seeing this scene, had more despair than shock in their eyes, and those King Realm sea monsters found it difficult to even maintain their fighting stance. At this moment, they didn't even dare to raise their heads to look at Deng Tai in front of them. After all, the strength of the one in front of them was truly terrifying. Who's next? A faint smile appeared at the corner of Deng Tai's mouth as he looked at the sea monsters in front of him and spoke, his voice filled with calm and gentleness. It was impossible to tell that he was the one who had just slain a true King Realm sea monster. How could the great Xia dynasty have an existence like you? What benefits did the great Xia dynasty offer Senior? We are willing to offer 3 times as much, only asking Senior to spare us. At this moment, a true King Realm sea monster cautiously stepped forward and spoke to Deng Tai. However, it was clear that he was truly afraid of Deng Tai at this moment. But it was no wonder they feared Deng Tai so much. After all, a sea monster of the same true King Realm was so easily slain by the middle-aged man in front of them. How could they not fear the middle-aged man in front of them? Today, all of you shall die. Deng Tai looked at the sea race in front of him with no fluctuation in his eyes. He slowly looked at the few people in front of him and spoke calmly, his voice carrying an unyielding indifference, as if everything in the world had nothing to do with him. Although Senior is a saint-level expert, our sea race has many saint-level experts. Does Senior really want to be an enemy of my sea race for a mere great Xia dynasty? Seeing that this tactic was ineffective, the true King Realm cultivator of the sea race changed to a threat, looking at Deng Tai with a determined and fearful expression. At this moment, he had no other options. Besides this tactic, he could not think of any other way to threaten the middle-aged man in front of him. If the middle-aged man in front of them was wary of their sea race, then perhaps the middle-aged man would let them go. Otherwise, they would surely die today. A mere sea race cannot make Deng afraid. After Deng Tai heard the threat from this true King Realm sea monster, a look of disdain appeared in his eyes. This was the first time he had shown such a disdainful expression since he appeared here. Then, Deng Tai said no more. He slowly threw out the wooden box in his hand, and then the wooden box slowly floated in the sky. The next second, the wooden box floating in the sky slowly opened, and instantly, a terrifying dominance emanated from within the wooden box. The sea monsters standing in the sky instantly felt a terrifying dominance enveloping them. At this moment, they didn't even have a chance to move. At the same time, a look of despair appeared on the faces of the sea monsters. Evidently, at this moment, they also knew that they had lost their chance to live. Feeling the terrifying sword intent enveloping them, the 2 true King Realm sea monsters of the sea race were constantly trying to break free from the shackles with their own strength. But how could Deng Tai's sword intent be so easily shaken off by them? One terrifying dominance after another continuously emanated from the wooden box in the sky. Green plum, bamboo horse. Looking at the wooden box in the sky, a hint of nostalgia appeared in Deng Tai's eyes. At the same time, the corners of his mouth also curved slightly, and a faint voice slowly came from his mouth. Although his voice seemed a little faint, it was like the sound of death, making the sea monsters present feel despair. Then, the true sound of sword bells came from the wooden box in the sky. The next second, one small and exquisite flying sword after another flew out from the wooden box. The moment these flying swords emerged, a sense of joy could be felt from them. After circling around Deng Tai intimately, they flew directly towards the sea race in front of them. Soon, these flying swords directly passed through the sea monsters in front of them. In just a blink of an eye, all the sea monsters in front were dealt with by Deng Tai's flying swords. After dealing with the sea monsters in front, all these flying swords flew back into the wooden box in Deng Tai's hand. Then, Deng Tai didn't even bother to look, and the scene in front of him transformed into a phantom and disappeared from its original spot. Only a shower of blood slowly dissipated between heaven and earth, as if nothing had ever appeared there. Just as Deng Tai was dealing with the sea race on this side, Chu Fan, who was in the Imperial Palace, also received a prompt from the system. Ding! Congratulations, host, for completing the mission to eliminate invading enemies of the sea race. Reward host with 1 true king summoning card. After hearing the system's prompt, Chu Fan understood that Peach Blossom Sword God Deng Tai had already dealt with the enemies, so a look of joy appeared on his face. Deng Tai truly lives up to his reputation as the new Peach Blossom Sword God in the world of snow. He easily dealt with the invading Yao beasts of the sea race. A smile appeared at the corner of Chu Fan's mouth. Although this time the sea race only dispatched 3 true King Realm sea monsters and a few King Realm Yao beasts, Deng Tai's easy resolution of them showed that even though Deng Tai was only at the initial Saint Realm, his strength had probably far exceeded his realm. Moreover, after dealing with this invasion by the sea race, he also received a true King summoning card. Although it was only a true King summoning card, it was a decent reward for Chu Fan. Chapter 207 Young, Yin Shi San. Middle-aged, Xie Xiaofeng. The reality was exactly as Chu Fan had expected. Just as the system's reward arrived, Deng Tai's figure appeared directly before him. Reporting to your majesty, your subordinate has already slain all the invading enemies. Deng Tai, appearing before Chu Fan, immediately reported the news that he had finished slaying the sea demons. As expected of the sword god, he eliminated the invading enemies so quickly. Chu Fan looked at Deng Tai before him, a delighted smile appearing on his face, and then he spoke softly to Deng Tai. Since the enemies have been dealt with, your subordinate will take his leave. Deng Tai spoke to Chu Fan without any change in expression after hearing his words, as if dealing with those few sea demons was merely child's play for him. And that was indeed the case. Those sea demons posed no challenge to him whatsoever. After hearing Deng Tai's words, Chu Fan waved his hand at him, and immediately afterward, Deng Tai transformed into a streak of sword light and vanished. A true King summoning card. Since I've obtained it, I should use it. Chu Fan looked at the true King summoning card lying in the system space and used it immediately without the slightest hesitation. After all, keeping the true King summoning card now served no significant purpose. As Chu Fan's voice fell silent, the system in his mind sounded out. Ding! True King summoning card successfully used. Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning Yin 13 of the perfected True King realm. Chu Fan was somewhat surprised when he heard the system's voice. He had not expected the character summoned this time to be Yin 13. Chu Fan naturally knew about Yin 13. After all, he was Xie Xiaofeng's most respected opponent, and he was the one who cultivated the 13 Swords of Life, taking to its peak. He created the legendary 14th Sword of Life, taking, and the 15th Sword of Life, taking. However, Chu Fan had not expected Yin 13's strength to be only at the perfected True King realm. According to Chu Fan's guess, his strength should have reached the entering Saint or even the Saint King realm. Although he is only at the perfected True King realm, I believe that upon arriving in this world, with his talent, he can successfully break through to the entering Saint realm or even higher realms. Chu Fan looked at the summoning card lying in the system space, a look of anticipation appearing in his eyes. Yin 13's talent was not to be underestimated. Chu Fan believed he could break through to higher realms in this world. If Yin 13 in the Wuxiao novels possessed such terrifying sword Dao talent, how could he be weak in this world? System, I remember I haven't used this month's summoning opportunity yet, right? At this moment, Chu Fan suddenly seemed to recall something, and he spoke leisurely toward the system. Although the system had successfully upgraded and now offered a system mall and system missions, the system could still perform 1 summon per month, and this monthly summon was without any restrictions, meaning the monthly summoning opportunity could summon an even more powerful existence. The host has not used this month's summoning opportunity yet. Just after Chu Fan's voice fell, the system replied to his question. In that case, I will use this month's summoning opportunity immediately. I want to see what kind of existence this monthly summoning opportunity can bring forth. Upon hearing the system's words, Chu Fan decided to use the monthly summoning opportunity without any hesitation, as holding onto the summoning chance in the system space would not make it increase in value. It was better to use this month's summoning opportunity to enhance his strength. Ding! Congratulations to the host on a successful summon. Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning the sword god Xie Xiaofeng. As soon as Chu Fan's voice fell, another card appeared directly in his system space, and this card could be seen emitting a 7-colored radiance. I didn't expect to summon Xie Xiaofeng right after summoning Yin 13. To summon these two sworn rivals at once. I wonder what level Xie Xiaofeng's strength has reached now. Chu Fan was quite surprised when he heard the system's voice. He had not expected to summon Xie Xiaofeng right after summoning Yin 13. One must know that both Yin 13 and Xie Xiaofeng were sword Dao prodigies in their world, yet now he had summoned both of them simultaneously. However, Chu Fan was more curious about the extent of Xie Xiaofeng's strength, as Xie Xiaofeng did not die young like Yin 13, so his strength in a late stage must have surpassed the former Yin 13. Xie Xiaofeng, cultivation, perfected saint realm. Chu Fan was instantly stunned after opening the introduction regarding Xie Xiaofeng. He had not expected the summoned Xie Xiaofeng to be the middle-aged version, and more importantly, Xie Xiaofeng's strength had reached the perfected saint realm. He was only one step away from reaching the legendary Saint King realm. With Xie Xiaofeng now present, Chu Fan grew even more expectant. Perhaps initially he was still thinking about how to destroy the sea race. After all, the sea race was located in the western region, and while the western region could not compare to the central region, it still possessed saint-level expert throughout its domain. There were quite a few saint entry-level cultivators among them. So Chu Fan naturally wouldn't easily head to the western region just to complete the mission of eliminating the sea race. But things were different after summoning Xie Xiaofeng. After all, Xie Xiaofeng's strength had reached the perfected saint realm. Relying on his exquisite swordsmanship, he, at the perfected saint realm, should be able to fight a cultivator at the early stage Saint King. System, summon Xie Xiaofeng and Yin 13. Thinking of this, Chu Fan eagerly summoned the characters he had just obtained. As his voice fell, 2 beams of light appeared before him, and the next second, 2 figures materialized in front of Chu Fan. One of the figures was a handsome middle-aged man, and a faint, ethereal sword intent could be felt emanating from him. This person was the middle-aged Xie Xiaofeng. The middle-aged Xie Xiaofeng was completely different from the young Xie Xiaofeng. If the middle-aged Xie Xiaofeng resembled a refined scholar, then the young Xie Xiaofeng was like a sharp blade about to be drawn. Standing next to him was a young man with a slightly wicked appearance, and a terrifying sword intent could be felt radiating from a youth, as if the entire sky could not bear this dreadful sword intent. This young man was precisely Yin 13. The difference between him and Xie Xiaofeng was that Xie Xiaofeng's sword intent had been completely restrained, reaching a state of returning to simplicity. Yin 13, however, was like a precious sword soaring into the sky, his sword intent not restrained in the slightest. Chapter 208, Dongfang Bubi and his companion break through, the great battle on the front lines begins. From this, one could clearly see the gap between the middle-aged Xie Xiaofeng and the young Yin 13, as the middle-aged Xie Xiaofeng had already completely restrained his sword intent. However, his strength at this moment far surpassed that of his younger self. Xie Xiaofeng and Yin 13 greet your majesty. Xie Xiaofeng and Yin 13 also turned their gaze toward Chu Fan at this time, bowing their hands toward him simultaneously as they spoke. There is no need for such formalities. With the two of you joining, the strength of my great Xia dynasty has greatly increased. Chu Fan hurriedly cupped his hands toward the two. Although the summoned individuals were 100% loyal to him, they also possessed their own thoughts. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally would not treat the summoned individuals lightly. I feel that the sword intent on you is extraordinary. How about a match between us? After Yin 13 stood up, he slowly turned his gaze toward Xie Xiaofeng beside him. Although Xie Xiaofeng had completely restrained the sword intent on his body at this moment. How could Yin 13, the sword demon, not sense the sword intent on him? He excitedly looked at Xie Xiaofeng before him, gripping the long sword in his hand. Yin 13 always regarded the long sword in his hand as more important than himself. Even when he was about to die, he never gave up his weapon. 13, now is not the time for you two to fight. Wait a while, and I will let you have a magnificent battle. Chu Fan felt a bit helpless upon hearing Yin 13's words, so he slowly stepped forward and spoke to Yin 13. Your servant obeys. After Yin 13 heard Chu Fan's words, he also restrained the sword intent on his body. However, Yin 13 was filled with anticipation at this moment. Just as Chu Fan had finished summoning the two, Unbeatable in the east and Xiangyu in the Hall of Worship successfully achieved a breakthrough to the entering Saint Realm. Two terrifying presences swept directly across the entire Chang'an city, instantly enveloping the city in a shadow. However, these two presences quickly subsided. Although many people were guessing the source of these two presences, once they felt that the two presences originated from the Imperial Palace in Chang'an City, others stopped speculating further. After all, the Imperial Palace was where their emperor resided, so how could they continue to investigate the source of these two presences? Moreover, the masters of these two powerful presences were not weak, and they naturally lacked the courage to investigate the origins of these masters. Come, I will take you to see the others in the Hall of Worship. Chu Fan had not expected Unbeatable in the east and Xiangyu to achieve a breakthrough to the entering Saint Realm at this time. He waved his hand at Xie Xiaofeng and Yin 13 and spoke. After speaking, Chu Fan led Xie Xiaofeng and Yin 13 toward the Hall of Worship. Chu Fan felt a hint of anticipation regarding Unbeatable in the east and Xiangyu. After all, with Unbeatable in the east and Xiangyu achieving a breakthrough, plus his summoning of Xie Xiaofeng, his great Xia dynasty now had 4 saint entry-level cultivators. Furthermore, Xie Xiaofeng among them had reached the perfected saint realm. It could be said that the entire great Xia dynasty was now unrivaled in the eastern region. I didn't expect the great Xia dynasty to have 2 more individuals achieve a breakthrough to the entering saint realm. Moreover, I faintly sensed an even more terrifying presence within the great Xia imperial palace. Shao Zi's guardian, being a saint entry-level cultivator, naturally sensed these 2 presences. However, at this moment, he looked at the Chang'an imperial palace with even greater solemnity, because just a moment ago, he sensed an even more terrifying presence, and that presence had directly locked onto him. In that instant, he felt as if death had arrived. Are you suggesting that Chu Fan currently has someone by his side whose cultivation is higher than yours? Shao Zi was surprised upon hearing his words, and she spoke to the old man before her with an expression of disbelief. That is correct. This person's cultivation has reached at least the late Saint Realm, or perhaps even the Saint King Realm. The old man beside Shao Zi spoke to her without any concealment. After speaking, he looked at the great Xia dynasty's imperial palace with a worried gaze. The old man naturally knew that a terrifyingly powerful being had appeared beside Chu Fan. As for Shao Zi, she was not at all surprised by the old man's worry, but she was not concerned. After all, the stronger Chu Fan became, the happier she was. Just as Unbeatable in the east and Xiangyu achieved a breakthrough to the saint entry level in the imperial palace, the dispatched army clashed with the armies of the 2 imperial dynasties. Zhao Zilong led the White Horse volunteers like a swarm of hornets passing through, continuously slaughtering the Fengyun dynasty army ahead. Zhao Zilong had already achieved a breakthrough to the King Realm, making the Fengyun dynasty soldiers appear incredibly vulnerable before him. Moreover, Yang Zixing, who was beside Zhao Zilong, was like a god of war, constantly wielding the black iron long spear in his hand and harvesting the lives of the Fengyun dynasty soldiers. Yang Zixing had also achieved a breakthrough to the perfected Dharma aspect realm, just 1 step away from entering the King Realm. In less than the time it takes an incense stick to burn, Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing dealt with the Fengyun dynasty's vanguard. This time, the Fengyun dynasty's vanguard totaled 100,000 troops, yet they appeared so weak and vulnerable before Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing. General Zilong, are you interested in joining me to slaughter our way through the main army of the Fengyun dynasty? After dealing with the Fengyun dynasty's vanguard, Yang Zixing slowly approached Zhao Zilong and spoke softly, a look of excitement visible on his face. Why not? Today, let the Fengyun dynasty know the might of my great Xia dynasty. Zhao Zilong did not hesitate at all after hearing Yang Zixing's words. After all, Chunjibao had directly handed the great snow dragon cavalry over to the 2 of them, so they naturally had no reservations. Following this, Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing exchanged glances and immediately led the troops behind them toward the main force of the Fengyun dynasty. At this moment, the 2 of them were like wild horses running loose, and the troops behind them were equally bloodthirsty, charging continuously toward the main force of the Fengyun dynasty alongside Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing. Meanwhile, outside a valley on the other side, there was a plain where a large army was slowly riding. The banner erected directly in front of this army clearly bore the characters Fengyun, indicating that this army belonged to the Fengyun dynasty. This army had already reached 1 million troops. In the center of this army stood a middle-aged man who looked full of majesty, and he gazed slowly at the marching troops. Chapter 209 Grand Marshal Dugu Xian of the Fengyan Dynasty. The Great Battle begins. This person was Dugu Xian, the Grand Marshal commanding the troops for the Fengyan Dynasty this time. Although his cultivation was merely the early phase of the Dharma aspect realm, his ability to command troops far surpassed that of others. Moreover, several old ancestors of the Fengyan Dynasty were by his side. The cultivation of these old ancestors of the Fengyan Dynasty had all reached the Dharma aspect realm, and the cultivation of one of the Fengyan Dynasty's old ancestors had even reached the early stage king. We only need half a day to enter the Great Xia Dynasty. I wonder if the contingent from the Tianxin Dynasty has made contact with the Great Xia Dynasty yet. Dugu Xian was seen frowning as he looked at the valley before him. At this moment, he did not hesitate at all, leading his troops directly into the valley. Their vanguard team had just passed through here and reported that it was safe, so naturally, they were not worried about an ambush inside the valley. Moreover, who would dare to ambush their million-strong army? According to their conjecture, the Great Xia Dynasty had not yet reacted and might not even be aware of the news that the Fengyan Dynasty and the Tianxin Dynasty had mobilized troops. However, all of this was Dugu Xian's delusion. The Great Xia Dynasty not only knew about their mobilization, but had already dispatched troops to stop them. At this moment, their vanguard team had already been dealt with, a fact Dugu Xian was completely unaware of. Soon, their army entered the valley in an orderly fashion. As they entered the valley, just as Dugu Xian had expected, they did not fall into an ambush. However, just then, Dugu Xian suddenly sensed a stream of qi approaching their location, and simultaneously, the ground began to tremble. It was as if some terrifying existence was heading towards them. Everyone, prepare for battle. After sensing this sudden change, Dugu Xian immediately shouted to the army ahead. As soon as his voice fell, heavy sounds of clashing weapons were heard, and then the soldiers on the outer layer of the million-strong army immediately placed massive shields in front of themselves. Clearly, these shields were a precaution against sudden combat. It must be said that Dugu Xian's ability to command troops was indeed strong. In just an instant, he had the army execute this formation. Even inside the valley, they would not suffer too great a loss. The outer soldiers could use their shields to block boulders rolling down from the mountaintop. Of course, Zhao Zilong and the others did not choose to roll boulders down from the mountaintop at this time. Instead, they led their troops directly toward them. Sure enough, after only a moment, the army led by Zhao Zilong and the other person appeared before everyone. I didn't expect to be discovered by the Great Xia Dynasty's army before even entering the Great Xia Dynasty. However, if it's just one army trying to stop us, it's simply like a praying mantis trying to stop a carriage. Dugu Xian was somewhat surprised watching Zhao Zilong and the others' army continuously approach them. But when he saw the army behind Zhao Zilong, a look of disdain appeared on his face. After all, the army behind Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing was not even one-fifth the size of their million-strong army. So why should he fear the army before him? On the other side, Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing naturally also spotted the army before them. It seems the commander of this army is not weak. To adopt this defensive posture in just a few minutes, this person is clearly not weak. Zhao Zilong looked at the formation that had already adopted a defensive posture, a hint of curiosity appearing on his face. At the same time, he understood that they had likely encountered a worthy opponent this time, because if anyone else encountered the situation inside the valley, they would probably either retreat or charge forward right now. However, this army chose to defend the enemy right where they stood, and even deployed shields to guard against boulders rolling down from the mountain peaks. From this alone, it was evident that the person commanding this army was not weak. Who cares if he's weak or not? I refuse to believe he can withstand the attacks of the two of us. After hearing Zhao Zilong's words, Yang Zixing looked excitedly at the army ahead. All he wanted now was to slaughter the army before him. So naturally, he didn't care whether the person commanding this army was strong or not. After hearing Yang Zixing's words, Zhao Zilong also shook his head helplessly. At this moment, he completely understood Yang Zixing's temperament. Who goes there? State your name. Then, Yang Zixing, riding his warhorse and holding a black long spear, slowly walked out and spoke to the Fengyan Dynasty's million-strong army ahead. His voice instantly spread throughout the entire army. Dugu Xian, the second route Grand Marshal of the Fengyan Dynasty. And who might your excellency be? From the Fengyan Dynasty's ranks, Dugu Xian hadn't expected this young man to step out and question him. But as one of the Grand Marshals of the Fengyan Dynasty, he naturally showed no fear and replied immediately. After speaking, a look of pride appeared on Dugu Xian's face, as he was, after all, one of the Grand Marshals of the Fengyan Dynasty. So, it's a Marshal of the Fengyan Dynasty. Doesn't that make the killing even more interesting? After hearing Dugu Xian's words, a cruel smile appeared on Yang Zixing's face. The long spear in his hand began to tremble violently, as if eager to completely obliterate the person before him. Yang Zixing, vanguard under the great Xia's general of the north. Nevertheless, he stepped out directly, glancing at Duguxin of the Fengyun dynasty as he spoke casually. White Horse General Zhao Zilong. Zhao Zilong also slowly rode his warhorse forward, looking at the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army as he spoke casually. I didn't expect that merely a general and a vanguard would dare to stop this marshal's million-strong army. It seems the great Xia dynasty truly looks down upon my Fengyun dynasty. Upon hearing the words of Zhao Zilong and the other person, Dugu Xian's face completely darkened. He hadn't expected that the people appearing before him were merely a general and a vanguard from the great Xia dynasty. When did my great Xia dynasty ever say we thought highly of your Fengyun dynasty? Yang Zixing looked at Dugu Xian and spoke with disdain. After speaking, the chi belonging to the perfected Dharma aspect realm burst forth from him, instantly sending a chill across the entire battlefield. Then, holding his long spear, he charged in alone. The moment he clashed with the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army, hundreds of soldiers near Yang Zixing were instantly sent flying. When they landed on the ground, their lives had reached their absolute end. Zhao Zilong fell helpless seeing Yang Zixing act so rashly, but he still led the great Snow Dragon Cavalry and the White Horse Volunteers directly towards the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army. Chapter 210 Duguxiang's Shock, the Terrifying Battle. At the same time, Zhao Zilong's king realm Qi burst forth completely. During this period, Zhao Zilong's cultivation had also thoroughly broken through to the Middle King realm. Therefore, Zhao Zilong, with his king realm Qi fully unleashed, appeared exceptionally dazzling on the entire battlefield. Moreover, every great Snow Dragon cavalry behind him had reached the Grotto Heaven realm in cultivation. In an instant, they arrived directly before the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army. Zhao Zilong then tore open a rift with a single long spear strike. His long spear strike directly resulted in the complete demise of hundreds of Fengyun dynasty soldiers, and at the same time, it opened a path for the army behind him. The great Snow Dragon cavalry and the army behind them followed closely beside Zhao Zilong, charging directly forward. The great Snow Dragon cavalry truly lived up to its reputation as Chun Jibao's strongest army. The tens of thousands of great Snow Dragon cavalry effortlessly tore open a gap in the Fengyun dynasty army before them. Then, the other armies directly charged into the Fengyun dynasty's main force. In just a moment, tens of thousands of the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army had fallen, and these soldiers all perished at the hands of the great Snow Dragon cavalry. As for the other armies Zhao Zilong brought, they had just begun to engage the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army. How have I never heard of such an army in the great Xia dynasty? Every soldier is composed of Grotto Heaven realm cultivators. Such an army is too terrifying. Dugu Xin, who was stationed in the center commanding the army, naturally witnessed this scene. He stared blankly in the direction of the great Snow Dragon cavalry, his face filled with disbelief. He had not expected the great Snow Dragon cavalry's strength to be so terrifying. At the same time, he realized that he had underestimated the great Xia dynasty from the very beginning. We must encircle and annihilate this army as quickly as possible, otherwise, a tragic price awaits us. After all, the strength of this army is too terrifying. An elder beside Dugu Xin also spoke with a solemn expression, having naturally discerned the formidable power of the great Snow Dragon cavalry. Now, only the 100,000 Dugu cavalry I trained can be sent to the battlefield. After hearing the elder's words, Dugu Xin nodded. Then, with a resolute gaze, he slowly said to a deputy commander beside him, "Send the Dugu cavalry to the battlefield." Upon hearing Dugu Xin's words, the deputy commander immediately accepted the order and rode out on his warhorse. Soon, this deputy commander arrived behind the million-strong army. The next second, he led out a portion of cavalry from the million-strong army that differed from the rest. The chi of these cavalry far surpassed that of the other million-strong Fengyun dynasty army. At the same time, it was evident that their equipment also far exceeded that of the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army. This army was the Dugu cavalry trained by Dugu Xin. Their strength far exceeded that of ordinary Fengyun dynasty armies. They could be said to be Dugu Xin's trump card in battles over the years. My army might not match the cultivation of this ace army of the great Xia dynasty, but their strength is by no means weak. Watching this dark cavalry heading towards the great Snow Dragon cavalry, a confident smile appeared on Dugu Xin's face. He had great confidence in the cavalry he had personally trained. This army might be able to deal with the great Xia's silver armor army, but the strength of the great Xia's white horse general seems to have exceeded our imagination. The elder beside Dugu Xin, who had been keeping his eyes closed, slowly opened them and looked in Zhao Zilong's direction, speaking. Although every soldier of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry had reached the Grotto Heaven realm in cultivation, the elder believed that the Dugu Cavalry, personally trained by Dugu Hixin, could deal with the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. However, upon sensing the chi from Zhao Zilong, the elder was somewhat surprised and unexpected. For this confrontation with the Great Xia Dynasty, their Fengyun Dynasty had dispatched him, an early-stage king. But he had not expected the Great Xia's White Horse General's cultivation to have reached the Middle King realm, clearly surpassing him, an early-stage king old ancestor. Indeed, even this marshal did not expect the Great Xia Imperial Dynasty to have a king realm general. After hearing the elder's words, Dugu Xian also looked towards Zhao Zilong with a sigh of emotion. Zhao Zilong now seemed like a white-clad god of war, moving through the million-strong army. And the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry behind him were like terrifying demons, constantly slaughtering the surrounding soldiers. This instantly made the battlefield seem somewhat difficult. On the other side, although Yang Zixing's strength was not as great as Zhao Zilong's, his killing speed was by no means inferior to Zhao Zilong's. However, his killing appeared extremely cruel, while the battle on Zhao Zilong's side appeared very elegant. That was the difference between the two. Reporting to General, a formidable army is approaching our direction. At this moment, the deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, who was charging through the million-strong army, slowly came to Zhao Zilong's side and spoke to him, looking at the Dugu cavalry charging towards them. The cultivation of this deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry had already reached the king realm, making him the strongest existence apart from Chen Jibao, the true commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. Do you have confidence in defeating them? As a king realm cultivator, Zhao Zilong naturally sensed this army. He then slowly spoke to the deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry beside him. Reporting to General, your subordinate general is confident in defeating them. Your subordinate general has full confidence in the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. Upon hearing Zhao Zilong's words, the deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry looked at the approaching army with killing intent in his eyes, filled with confidence. If that's the case, then slaughter them. Zhao Zilong also spoke slowly after hearing the deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry's words, though his eyes were filled with excitement. Then, the deputy commander of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry directly led the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry to charge towards the 100,000 Dugu cavalry. However, what the people currently engaged in battle did not know was that at the peak of the valley, two people were standing, leisurely observing the battle below. General Chen's Great Snow Dragon Cavalry truly lives up to its reputation as the strongest army of our Great Xia. I fear even this million-strong army will have difficulty resisting General's Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. The middle-aged man in a suit of armor slowly spoke to the middle-aged man beside him, who was clad in bright silver armor and held a long spear. After speaking, a hint of surprise and emotion appeared in his eyes. Chapter 211 Yu Fei and Chen Jibao's Scheme. The Encircled Million-Strong Army. General Yu's Yu family army is also a top-tier army, rarely seen in the world. Even for the Yu family army, resolving this million-strong army would be effortless. The middle-aged man, clad in silver-white armor, spoke leisurely after hearing the other middle-aged man's words. When he mentioned the Yu family army, his tone was filled with respect. General Chen, you flatter my Yu family army too much. However, the battle below will likely take some time to conclude. The middle-aged man, Yu Fei, waved his hand after hearing Chen Jibao's words. He then leisurely turned his gaze back to the battle raging in the valley below. So, hasn't General Yu already made preparations? Chen Jibao smiled and leisurely spoke to Yu Fei after hearing his words. Indeed, I can't outplay General Chen in anything. But how are the armies on General Chen's side doing now? Yu Fei was not surprised in the slightest after hearing Chen Jibao's words. Through their interactions during this time, he knew that Chen Jibao was no ordinary person. In fact, Chen Jibao's ability to command troops was in no way inferior to his own. Zilong and the others only need to fight for a short while longer. Then our two armies can enter the fray. By then, resolving this million-strong army of the Fengyun Dynasty will be effortless. Chen Jibao naturally wasn't too surprised after hearing Yu Fei's words. Instead, he calmly nodded at Yu Fei, then leisurely gazed towards the outside of the valley behind the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. At this moment, he seemed to see hundreds of thousands of troops approaching the valley from outside. After resolving this million-strong army of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty this time, we can directly invade the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. I wonder how the battle is progressing on General Qin and General Yang's side. Yu Fei also leisurely looked towards a mountain pass at this moment, because their appearance here meant that the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's million-strong army in the valley was destined to be completely annihilated here. Therefore, they had no worries about the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's million-strong army in the valley. Yu Fei was now more curious about the battle situation on Qin Xiong and Yang Ye's side. Qin Xiong and Yang Ye's strength is in no way weak. Moreover, they also have Lu Bu as their vanguard general. They are probably already engaged in a great battle by now. Chen Jibao frowned after hearing Yu Fei's words, because the forces on Qin Xiong and Yang Ye's side were in no way weaker than their own. What's more, the vanguard general for those two was Lu Bu. Although Lu Bu's strength was only at the Middle King realm, his madness as a vanguard general was something Chen Jibao quite liked. One could say Chen Jibao particularly favored such a fanatical vanguard general. However, Chen Jibao's greatest affinity was still for Zhao Zilong, because he found that Zhao Zilong was perfectly suited whether as a commander or a vanguard general. As the two spoke, the battle below grew even more terrifying. The entire valley was permeated with the smell of blood, and terrifying crimson blood already stained the entire valley. At the same time, the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, under the command of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry's deputy commander, clashed with Dugu Xian's Dugu Cavalry. Although Dugu Xian's Dugu Cavalry had good strength, they appeared somewhat weak when facing the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. Immediately after the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry and Dugu Cavalry clashed, the Snow Dragon Cavalry was instantly surrounded by 100,000 Dugu Cavalry. They intended to use their numerical advantage to successfully eliminate the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. However, they underestimated the strength of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. The Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, unable to wield their long spears in the confined environment, all pulled out the Bailiang sabers from their warhorses. Subsequently, a slaughter feast unfolded. I never expected this silver-armored cavalry of the Great Xia Dynasty to be so terrifying, and whether in close combat or range combat, they seemed to be an invincible existence. Dugu Xian, seeing this scene from afar, also frowned. He had originally thought that if their army surrounded this armored cavalry of the Great Xia Dynasty, they could reduce their advantage. But he hadn't expected that this silver-armored general of the Great Xia Dynasty would now pull out short-range combat sabers from their warhorses, instantly thwarting their plan. It seems that even if we win this great battle, our casualties will be heavy. The army led by that white horse general is also in no way weak. With them leading, our Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army will find it very difficult to resist. An elder beside Dugu Xian also leisurely looked towards Zhao Zilong and Yang Zixing at this moment. He could now see that the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army seemed to already be at a disadvantage. Even if they could successfully annihilate all of the Great Xia Dynasty's forces, the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army would suffer heavy losses. By then, attempting to attack the Great Xia Dynasty again would be somewhat fanciful. It seems only if we intervene to stop that white horse general and that vanguard general. Only then, without their commanders, would they perhaps be easier for our Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army to wipe out. An elder beside Dugu Xian also leisurely stood up and spoke at this moment. After he finished speaking, the aura of the Dharma aspect realm belonging to him completely erupted. The other elders also nodded inexplicably after hearing this elder's words. At this moment, they clearly felt that only by using this tactic could they easily resolve the Great Xia Dynasty's army. Otherwise, under the leadership of these two killing gods, their Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army would only be helplessly slaughtered. However, just as the elders were about to charge towards Zhao Zilong and the other, they heard successive hoofbeats from afar. Then, they felt the ground beneath them begin to tremble. The next second, two armies were seen attacking their million-strong Fengyun Imperial Dynasty army from two sides of the valley. Each of the two armies numbered only hundreds of thousands, but their combined strength was in no way inferior to the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army. More importantly, the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's army was now completely encircled. How is this possible? How could the Great Xia Dynasty know we would come here and set up an ambush in advance? Dugu Xian was completely dumbfounded when he saw the million-strong army he led completely surrounded. Then, he stared at the two armies with an expression of disbelief. At this moment, he felt as if he had fallen into hell. It seems we all overlooked that mysterious army of the Great Xia Dynasty. That mysterious army once seemed to monitor the entire Great Yin Dynasty. It appears that under their surveillance was not only the Great Xia Dynasty, but also our other three great dynasties. The elder who had been silent until now also spoke with some helplessness. At this moment, he seemed to have understood something. Chapter 212, The Surrounded Army of the Fengyun Dynasty. Chen Jibao's terrifying power. After all, the mysterious net of Luo was once detected by them, But at that time they thought that the net of Luo of the Great Xia Dynasty was only operating within the Great Xia Dynasty. They didn't expect their marching route to be under the control of the net of Luo. It seems this time we can only fight our way out, otherwise our million-strong army will all be buried here. At this moment, Duguxan also reacted, and he looked at the battlefield in front of him with a face full of unwillingness. At this time, he also knew that if he didn't react, the million-strong army would be buried here. If we withdraw now, we might be able to save half of the army, but if we continue to resist, we might be able to wipe out this army, but our million-strong army will all cease to exist. An old ancestor of the Dharma aspect realm next to him also spoke slowly. At this moment, he also understood that if they wanted to continue fighting to the death with the Great Xia Dynasty's army, then what awaited them might be complete annihilation. Subsequently, several old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty's Dharma aspect realm directly attacked the army, coming from behind. At this time, they clearly wanted to lead the army to break through from here. Duguxan also unwillingly glanced in the direction of Zhao Zilong and others in front. Then he turned his warhorse and galloped towards the old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty behind him. It seems these fellows from the Fengyun Dynasty intend to break through from this side, but it just so happens that this general can test the strength of these fellows from the Fengyun Dynasty. Chen Jiabao on the mountain valley naturally saw the old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty and Duguxan below at a glance. And, at the same time, he instantly understood the thoughts of the old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty and Duguxan. Then, holding his long spear, he leaped directly from the mountain valley. The next second, he instantly transformed into a silver-white light and disappeared above the mountain valley. Yu Fei, on the other hand, smiled in the direction where Chen Jiabao disappeared, and then he also instantly transformed into a ray of light and disappeared from his original spot. Of course, the direction he disappeared in was not the same as Chen Jiabao's. The battle below quickly broke out. The army sent by Yu Fei and the other quickly engaged in battle with the million-strong army of the Fengyun Dynasty. And the million-strong army of the Fengyun Dynasty also began to panic after seeing themselves surrounded. After all, the previous battle had already made them feel extremely difficult, and now their own army was entirely surrounded by the Great Xia Dynasty's army. So, they naturally began to panic. Some soldiers even started to flee, instantly causing the million-strong army of the Fengyun Dynasty to become chaotic. It seems General Yu and General Chun had already anticipated the plans of Yang Zixing and us, so they directly played such a trick. At this moment, Zhao Zilong, who was fighting amidst the million-strong army, naturally saw this scene, and he spoke with some emotion. At the same time, Zhao Zilong also began to admire Yu Fei and Chen Jiabao. After all, just by relying on their own guesses, they could ambush the Fengyun Dynasty's million-strong army here. Such two individuals naturally earned his admiration. It seems the commander of the Fengyun Dynasty intends to break through. When he saw Duguxan and others galloping towards another direction of the mountain valley, he instantly understood the thoughts of Duguxan and others. Then, Zhao Zilong's brows furrowed, but at this time he did not choose to stop Duguxan and the others. Because Zhao Zilong believed that since Yu Fei and the other had arranged such an ambush, Zhao Zilong believed that Yu Fei and the other would not let Duguxan and others escape. As expected, under Zhao Zilong's gaze, a silver-armored general, similarly clad in silver armor, slowly appeared in front of the army in the mountain valley. He held a long spear and calmly looked at the old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty and Duguxan who were coming towards him. Since you've already come, then don't leave. Chen Jiabao looked at Duguxan and the old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty who were coming towards him, a cruel smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Then, he instantly transformed into a ray of light and disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already next to an old ancestor of the Fengyun Dynasty's Dharma aspect realm. Then, he lightly struck this old ancestor of the Fengyun Dynasty with his long spear. The terrifying force directly sent this Dharma aspect realm old ancestor of the Fengyun Dynasty flying. And at the same time, the sound of bones shattering echoed in the ears of everyone present. This instantly made the several old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty and Duguxan feel their scalps tingle. That Dharma aspect realm old ancestor of the Fengyun Dynasty directly collapsed to the ground, his entire body seeming to have gone limp. Chen Jiabao was not at all surprised by this scene. He once again held his long spear and charged towards the several old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty. Terrifying power instantly swept across the entire scene, and at the same time, the long spear in his hand also directly struck towards the several old ancestors of the Fengyun Dynasty. The next second, the long spear in his hand once again landed on an old ancestor of the Fengyun Dynasty's Dharma aspect realm. This Dharma aspect, realm old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, didn't even have a chance to react before he was directly taken out by this long spear. Damn it! How can the Great Xia dynasty have such a terrifying existence? This person's cultivation has probably already reached the king completion realm. That early stage king old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty was completely stunned when he saw Chen Jibao's actions, and at the same time, he was also doubting Chen Jibao's true strength. However, this king realm old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty did not continue forward. Instead, he looked at Chen Jibao's direction with a resentful expression. At this moment, he knew that even if he came to Chen Jibao, it would only be to his death. Old ancestor, what should we do now? Dugu Xn also came to the side of this old ancestor and spoke to him slowly, but it was clear that Dugu Xin's eyes were filled with panic. At this moment, he was filled with fear towards the silver-armored general in front of him. You are the commander of this army. What to do now should be your decision, not mine. After hearing Dugu Xin's words, this king realm old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty became furious and roared directly. Dugu Xin, who had originally wanted to hear his old ancestor's opinion, was instantly stunned after hearing the Fengyan dynasty's old ancestor's words. He had not expected his old ancestor to actually roar and scold him. Old ancestor, this marshal has decided to break through this army and escape from another direction. Dugu Xin suddenly looked in another direction at this moment, his eyes filled with urgency as he spoke in that direction. Since he knew that he couldn't break through here, then he could only try another direction. Chapter 213, continuing the breakthrough. Yu Fei's encirclement and suppression. The old ancestor of the king realm from the Fengyan dynasty could only nod helplessly after hearing Dugu Xin's words. At this point, it seemed they had no other choice but to break through from another direction. Perhaps they could break through from here, but as top combatants of the Fengyan dynasty, they would surely fall into the hands of the silver-armored general before them. This was not what they wished to see. Thus, the old ancestor of the king realm from the Fengyan dynasty and Dugu Xn led their army to change direction once more, charging towards Yu Fei. Their army swiftly moved across the battlefield, then attacked in the direction of the army, led by Yu Fei. Chen Jibao saw this scene, but did not stop them. Instead, he continued to lead his army to slaughter the other forces of the Fengyan dynasty. Yu Fei's strength had already reached the late Dharma aspect stage when he was summoned, and during this time, he had successfully made a breakthrough to the king realm. Although Yu Fei's strength was merely at the early stage king, it was still easy for him to deal with the old ancestor of the king realm from the Fengyan dynasty and Dugu Xn, not to mention the several cultivators in the Dharma aspect realm from the Yu family army around Yu Fei. Of course, one of them was Yu Fei's son, Yu Yun. Moreover, Zhao Zilong could also support Yu Fei, so Chen Jibao was not worried that they could break through from Yu Fei's direction. Stopping their breakthrough now was not as good as eliminating these soldiers of the Fengyan dynasty beforehand. After all, as long as there was hope, the soldiers of the Fengyan dynasty would not face death willingly. This was also the best time for Chen Jibao and his forces to slaughter the Fengyan dynasty soldiers. The facts were just as Chen Jibao had imagined. When the soldiers of the Fengyan dynasty saw their own old ancestor and Grand Marshal launching a surprise attack, they all followed their old ancestors and Grand Marshal's troops. Consequently, the Fengyan dynasty's army, which had been resisting, began to abandon their resistance and merged into the troops behind their Grand Marshal. Chen Jibao and the others naturally moved even faster to eliminate the Fengyan dynasty's army at this point. I didn't expect this fellow to come towards me, but do you think you can escape by coming in my direction? Yu Fei looked at the old ancestor of the king realm from the Fengyan dynasty and Dugu Xn, who were coming towards him, a smile playing on his lips. Then, he leisurely walked towards this contingent of the Fengyan dynasty, holding his Li Yuan long spear. Beside him were Yu Yun, who was in the Dharma aspect realm, and Zhang Xian, who was in the spirit roaming realm, among others. As for the Yu family army, they were all spread out, slaughtering the Fengyan dynasty's army, and, at the same time, they were in a defensive posture, preventing the Fengyan dynasty's main army from breaking through. As the Fengyan dynasty's breakthrough army drew closer, a subtle smile also appeared on Yu Fei's lips. I never thought that the renowned Grand Marshal of the Fengyan dynasty would be fleeing like a stray dog here. Yu Fei looked at Dugu Xn and slowly said, his eyes filled with contempt and disdain. If you have the guts, fight this marshal to the death. To ambush this marshal in a valley, is this all your great Xia dynasty is capable of? Dugu Xn looked at Yu Fei before him, his face filled with anger. He believed that, with his strength, he would definitely not be weaker than Yu Fei. However, he didn't expect to fall into Yu Fei's ambush this time. At this moment, Dugu Xn still had full confidence in himself. It is possible for you to fight this general, but you must first defeat my son. Otherwise, you will have no chance to fight me. Yu Fei looked at Dugu Xian before him, his eyes filled with a hint of mockery. Then, he slowly spoke to Dugu Xian, and after speaking, he nodded to Yu Yun beside him. Yu Yun then rode his warhorse directly forward, his eyes filled with a fiery glow. Come, fight your grandpa, Yu. Yu Yun, holding his silver hammer, looked at Dugu Xian and spoke with disdain. At this point, he had already reached the middle stage of the Dharma body realm, so he naturally felt disdain for Dugu Xian, who was only in the early phase of the Dharma aspect realm. You snot-nosed brat, you're seeking death. Upon seeing Yu Yun, who was provoking him, an uncontrollable rage instantly appeared on Dugu Xian's face. He never thought that just a half-grown child would dare to challenge him. Thus, he instantly drew the battle saber from his warhorse, then looked at Yu Yun before him with an angry expression. However, his adjutant directly rode his warhorse out, then looked at Yu Yun before him and spoke with disdain. How could a mere yellow-haired brat be worth our marshal's effort? Then this adjutant, holding a long spear, charged towards Yu Yun, and his body emanated the cultivation of the spirit roaming realm, clearly indicating that this person's strength was not weak. When Yu Yun saw this adjutant, who was holding a long spear and charging towards him, a flicker of displeasure crossed his face. Then, he quickly leaped up, and the iron hammer in his hand directly struck the adjutant who was holding the long spear. The terrifying force instantly shattered the long spear in the adjutant's hand, and at the same time, the silver hammer in Yu Yun's hand directly smashed onto the adjutant's body. The terrifying force directly sent the adjutant flying, and at the same time, a huge indentation appeared on the adjutant's chest. He struggled for only a few breaths before completely perishing. Is this the so-called general of the Fengyun dynasty? He's too weak. He couldn't even take one hammer from this young master. Yu Yun looked at the fallen adjutant and spoke with disdain. After speaking, he directly turned his gaze towards Dugu Xian. Dugu Xian was also completely stunned by Yu Yun's actions at this moment. He never thought that this young brat before him would possess such terrifying strength. Let's just break through directly. Don't waste time here. The old ancestor of the King realm from the Fengyun dynasty couldn't help but frown at this moment and spoke to Dugu Xian. At this time, he also felt that the large army of the Fengyun dynasty behind them was constantly being slaughtered. Therefore, this old ancestor of the King realm from the Fengyun dynasty anxiously instructed Dugu Xian. Everyone, charge for this marshal. After hearing the old ancestor's words, Dugu Xian also saw Chen Zhibao charging towards them from behind. Thus, he hastily issued orders to the large army behind him. Then, he, holding a long saber, charged towards Yu Fei. Yu Fei, however, directly ignored Dugu Xian and charged towards the old ancestor of the King realm from the Fengyun dynasty with his long spear. His long spear thrust directly towards the elder of the Fengyun dynasty, and a terrifying force directly assaulted this old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty. The old ancestor of the King realm from the Fengyun dynasty, who had initially not cared about Yu Fei, instantly became solemn, then directly picked up the long sword in his hand and blocked Yu Fei's long spear. Chapter 214, The Great Battle Ends. Prisoners of war are taken in. Qin Xiong arrives at Zhenbeiwen. The old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty, who was in the King realm, had not expected the middle-aged man before him to also have reached the King realm, instantly causing his scalp to go numb. At the same time, he began cursing Yun Xiaotian, the emperor of the Fengyun dynasty, in his heart. Since he was unclear about the strength of the Great Xia dynasty, for Yun Xiaotian to choose to launch an attack on the Great Xia dynasty, wasn't he setting up him, this old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty, for failure? However, at this moment, he did not have much opportunity to secretly curse the emperor of the Fengyun dynasty, because Yu Fei's long spear had already collided with the long sword in his hand. The immense power directly sent him, the old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty, flying, before he crashed heavily onto a group of soldiers from the Fengyun dynasty, instantly knocking down the soldiers of the Fengyun dynasty. Yu Fei, meanwhile, carried the long spear in his hand and chased after the old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty. Dugu Xian was also completely stunned when he saw this scene. He had not expected that his own King realm old ancestor was actually no match for the middle-aged man before him. However, at this moment, he was also unable to protect himself. Just as he was momentarily dazed, Yu Yun's iron hammer was already smashing towards his direction. Feeling this threat, Dugu Xian quickly twisted his body, narrowly missing Yu Yun's strike. Yu Yun's hammer strike landed directly on the warhorse beneath Dugu Xian, instantly flattening Dugu Xian's warhorse. Witnessing this, Dugu Xian couldn't help but swallow. He had not expected the young brat before him to possess such terrifying strength, flattening the warhorse beneath him into a meat patty with just a simple hammer strike. But the next second, the iron hammer in Yu Yun's hand was swinging toward him again. Feeling the terrifying power rushing towards him, Dugu Xian quickly prepared to block the iron hammer. The battle saber in his hand collided with the iron hammer in Yu Yun's hand. The next second, the terrifying force sent Dugu Xian flying. At the same time, the battle saber in his hand also flew out. Clearly, Dugu Xian had underestimated Yu Yun's strength. Yu Yun had no intention of letting Dugu Xian go. He continued to wield his iron hammer and smash it towards Dugu Xian. The terrifying force instantly swept across the entire field. Wherever Yu Yun passed, soldiers of the Fengyun dynasty fell. This horrifying sight naturally filled Dugu Xian with fear, so he could only continuously dodge Yu Yun's iron hammer. While Dugu Xian and the old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty were being held up by Yu Yun and Yu Fei, Zhao Zilong and Chun Jibao in the rear were directly leading their armies to continuously slaughter the troops of the Fengyun dynasty. In less time than it takes an incense stick to burn, hundreds of thousands of Fengyun dynasty soldiers had fallen, and this number was still increasing. As for Dugu Xian, he was being chased raggedly by Yu Yun. Even the battle robe he was wearing appeared tattered, and he looked utterly miserable. Meanwhile, the King Realm old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty looked even more wretched. One of his arms had been severed by Yu Fei, and blood was continuously flowing from his body. He looked extremely battered. Yu Fei had no intention of stopping now. He continued to wield his long spear and charge toward this old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty. On the other side, Yu Yun also stopped playing around. He began seriously attacking Dugu Xian. The serious Yu Yun's strength greatly increased. The iron hammer in his hand was swung with fierce power, and in just a moment, he hammered Dugu Xian flying. As the great battle continued, an hour quickly passed, and by this time, Yu Fei and Yu Yun had completely dealt with their opponents. Following the demise of Dugu Xian and the old ancestor of the Fengyun dynasty, only a few 100,000 soldiers remained out of the Fengyun dynasty's million-strong army. At this point, they appeared panicked during the encirclement, and many Fengyun dynasty troops directly threw down their weapons and surrendered. Those who surrender shall not be killed, but all who hold weapons shall be executed. Seeing this scene, Yu Fei naturally knew it was time to wrap things up. He held his long spear and roared toward the Fengyun dynasty army ahead, his voice filled with majesty. Soon, his voice spread throughout the entire Fengyun dynasty army. The Fengyun dynasty army, already panicked from the fighting, immediately threw down their weapons upon hearing Yu Fei's words, covering their heads and crouching on the ground. At this moment, they no longer possessed any will to resist. After seeing the Fengyun dynasty army surrender one after another, Zhao Zilong and the others also put away their weapons. Zhao Zilong then led the army to surround the surrendered Fengyun dynasty troops. At this time, the only one who felt slightly disgruntled was probably Yang Zixing. Clearly, he had not yet satisfied his bloodlust. Clean up the battlefield and count the casualties. Chun Jibao also led his army slowly toward Yu Fei and the others. He frowned and spoke to the generals beside him. Following this, the generals around him began cleaning up the battlefield and counting their own troops. Another hour quickly passed. During this hour, Yu Fei and the others completely incorporated all the surrendered Fengyun dynasty troops. This time, the remaining Fengyun dynasty army amounted to over 400,000, while all the other Fengyun dynasty troops had been slain by them. As for the army they brought, tens of thousands had fallen in this great battle, but the ratio was extremely low. It could be said that more than 10 Fengyun dynasty soldiers were exchanged for a single Great Xia dynasty soldier. Subsequently, Yu Fei and the others incorporated the 400,000 Fengyun dynasty troops and headed directly toward the Fengyun dynasty. After Yu Fei's troops left the valley, a raging fire ignited within the valley. The hundreds of thousands of Fengyun dynasty soldiers were burned to ashes in the raging fire, ultimately leaving behind nothing but cinders. Due to the cleanup by the net of Luo, not even ashes remained. Just as Yu Fei's army was advancing toward the Fengyun dynasty, Qin Xiong and Yang Yi, on the other side, also led their armies to the borders of the Great Xia dynasty. This time, they were located exactly where Qin Xiong had previously come to provide support, Jinbei Pass. The one guarding Jinbei Pass at this time was Marshal Chu Hang, one of Chu Long's adopted sons. After learning of the arrival of Qin Xiong and Yang Yi, he immediately invited the two of them to his residence. After Chu Fan ascended the throne, he immediately dispatched Marshal Chu Hang to the border to guard Jinbei Pass. Of course, this was only a temporary measure for him to guard Jinbei Pass, as Chu Fan's goal was not merely a small Great Yin dynasty. Chapter 215 Wars Erupt, Chu Fan's Wedding. Qin Xiong and Yang Yi also followed Marshal Chu Hang directly to the Prince of Jinbei's estate at Jinbei Pass without any hesitation. This general received orders very early to launch an attack on the Tianqing dynasty. Your subordinate general, Marshal Chu Hang, will fully cooperate with both generals. Upon arriving at the Prince of Jinbei's estate, Marshal Chu Hang bowed respectfully to Qin Xiong and Yang Yi, speaking with an unprecedented look of excitement on his face. Marshal Chu Hang was naturally very clear about Qin Xiong's strength, so he was not at all surprised that Qin Xiong was the commander for this campaign. As for Yang Yi, who was able to command this great battle alongside Qin Xiong, although Marshal Chu Hang did not know his specific strength, he believed that anyone who could be on par with Qin Xiong could not possibly be a weakling. Moreover, Marshal Chu Hang at this moment hoped even more that Qin Xiong and Yang Yi could completely annihilate the entire Tianqing dynasty. This was the wish of Marshal Chu Hang and all the generals of the Prince of Jinbei's estate. With such an opportunity before him, how could Marshal Chu Hang possibly miss it? How many troops are there in total at Jinbei Pass now? After hearing Marshal Chu Hang's words, Qin Xiong nodded, then asked him with a puzzled expression. He was quite curious about the number of troops at Jinbei Pass, and Qin Xiong also wanted to know how many soldiers Jinbei Pass had before launching an attack on the Tianqing dynasty. After all, during a previous expedition, Chu Fan had directly entrusted the entire Northern Territory Army to Qin Xiong's command. Reporting to the general, Jinbei Pass has a total of 500,000 troops, with 400,000 available for deployment. Upon hearing Qin Xiong's question, Marshal Chu Hang immediately replied without hesitation. At this point, he had completely entrusted all his forces to Qin Xiong, so he naturally would not conceal anything. 400,000 troops are enough. This general originally thought of mobilizing some forces from other places, but now the troops at Jinbei Pass are already sufficient. After hearing Marshal Chu Hang's words, Qin Xiong nodded with satisfaction. Although they had brought a total of 1 million troops this time, 1 million troops were still a bit few for them. After all, this time they were facing the entire Tianqing dynasty. Even if they had the strength to take down the entire Tianqing dynasty, they would still need troops to garrison it. Subsequently, Qin Xiong and Yang Yi discussed how to attack the Tianqing dynasty at Jinbei Pass. Ultimately, the two decided to have Lu Bu lead 100,000 black armored iron cavalry as the vanguard directly towards the Tianqing dynasty. After all, they both knew the strength of Lu Bu and the black armored iron cavalry. As for the rear, it would be guarded by Qin Xiong and Yang Yi. Of course, the seventh young master of the Yang family also followed Lu Bu as the vanguard. The seventh young master of the Yang family's strength had already reached the Dharma aspect realm, so accompanying Lu Bu as the vanguard was the best choice. Marshal Chu Hang, on the other hand, led weaker troops to occupy cities. After all, once Lu Bu and the seventh young master of the Yang family capture a city, they would move on. As several armies began to attack the Tianqing dynasty and the Fengyan dynasty, Chang'an City also began to operate. Moreover, Chang'an City also started to become lively at this time because their majesty was taking 2 consorts simultaneously this time. Such a situation naturally made Chang'an City bustling. Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong looked towards the imperial palace with joyful expressions. After all, their grandson and son marrying at this time was the best outcome for them. Chu Long was even more excited, hoping that his grandson would allow him to hold a great-grandson. Chu Tianxiong's face also showed a look of anticipation. He also wanted to hold a grandson. The busiest person today was probably Feng Shiran. She was bustling about, preparing wedding dresses for Qingyao and Luo Tianyi. After all, they were her 2 daughters-in-law, so how could she be careless? As the auspicious hour arrived, Chu Fan, clad in a red dragon robe, slowly rode a red horse towards the Prince of Jinbei's estate. The Prince of Jinbei's estate in Chang'an City was converted from a princely mansion, and it was precisely the residence where Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong resided. As for why Luo Tianyi and Qingyao would marry from the Prince of Jinbei's estate, it was all the result of discussions between Luo Tianyi's father and them. After all, the Great Xia dynasty had just sent out troops, and Luo Tianyi's father did not want Chu Fan to affect the Great Xia dynasty's army because of this grand wedding. So, he decided to let his daughter marry into the imperial palace alongside Qingyao from the Prince of Jinbei's estate. Your Majesty, wearing this red dragon robe, is truly dazzling, a combination of an unparalleled young master and a majestic and dominant emperor. Fang Xianling looked at Chu Fan, who was wearing a red dragon robe, and nodded with satisfaction, while an incredibly excited smile spread across his face. I say, old Fang, stop showing off your creation. Wang Meng, who was beside Fang Xianling, couldn't listen anymore at this point, so he helplessly rubbed his forehead and said. Su Shu also laughed from the side after hearing their conversation. As it was their emperor's wedding day, they were naturally very happy. So what if it's this old man's handiwork? After all, this old man specifically designed several sets of dragon robes for the emperor. It's a pity you don't have the chance to see them now. Fang Xianling said without reservation after hearing Wang Meng's words. Ever since Fang Xianling came to the Great Xia dynasty, he had diligently worked for Chu Fan. His main domain was designing Chang'an City and solving the livelihood problems of the common people. So naturally, Chu Fan's dragon robes were also designed by him. Some time ago, upon learning that Chu Fan was about to marry, he designed several styles of dragon robes. And this red dragon robe that Chu Fan was wearing at this moment was his most proud creation. At this time, the welcoming procession slowly moved towards the Prince of Zhenbei's estate under everyone's gaze. The one leading Chu Fan's horse was the simple-minded Dian Wei, who was also wearing a red outfit, looking so dazzling. However, his sturdy physique wearing these red clothes appeared a bit clumsy. Not far from him, Su Chu was also dressed in red clothes like him, but Su Chu looked much cuter than him. Chu Fan, watching these two fellows riding on horseback, couldn't help but laugh. He hadn't expected Su Chu and Dian Wei to look so comical in their red clothes. At this moment, it wasn't just Chu Fan who was paying attention to Su Chu and Dian Wei. However, for them, although Su Chu and Dian Wei were amusing, they were still eager to see their monarch, so all the cultivators turned their gaze towards Chu Fan, who was riding on the warhorse. Seeing Chu Fan's handsome face, many young maidens showed expressions of envy. At this moment, however, one figure in the crowd had a faint look of sadness in her eyes. Chapter 216. On the wedding day, Xiao Zi left. If Chu Fan were here, he would recognize the identity of this figure whose eyes were filled with gloom. This person was Shangwan Qingcheng, who had come to Chang'an City specifically to look for Chu Fan. However, she had encountered an incident on her journey, causing her arrival in Chang'an City to be a little late. Upon arriving in Chang'an City, Shangwan Qingcheng heard the news that Chu Fan was about to marry Luo Tianyi and Qingyao. Thus, Shangwan Qingcheng did not appear before Chu Fan. At this moment, Chu Fan slowly followed the procession toward the Prince of Zhenbei's estate. I didn't expect the Emperor to be so handsome. If only I could marry the Emperor. Stop dreaming. How could a heroic figure like the Emperor be someone you are worthy of? The two individuals the Emperor is marrying this time are both prodigies. That's right. Only true prodigies are worthy of the Emperor. People like you should forget about it. I don't ask for much. I only ask to be able to see the venerable Emperor every day. The cultivators present began discussing the departing procession of Chu Fan. At this moment, they all wished they could see Chu Fan more often. After all, Chu Fan's appearance far exceeded their imagination. They hadn't expected the Emperor who established the great Xia Imperial Dynasty to be so handsome. As for why they called Chu Fan Emperor, it was naturally because everyone referred to him that way, so all the cultivators and common people in Chang'an City used this title for Chu Fan. Inside the Prince of Zhenbei's estate, the atmosphere was also lively. They were awaiting Chu Fan's arrival. Luo Tianyi's father, in particular, stood inside the Prince of Zhenbei's estate, his face beaming with excitement, anxiously awaiting Chu Fan's arrival. As for everyone else, they looked at Luo Tianyi's father with envy. After all, Chu Fan was the emperor who established the great Xia Imperial Dynasty. Having their daughter marry Chu Fan naturally elevated their status significantly in an instant. As the procession slowly moved, Chu Fan quickly arrived at the Prince of Zhenbei's estate. By this time, the leaders of numerous factions had already appeared outside the Prince of Zhenbei's estate. Naturally, these factions were all influential figures throughout the great Xia Imperial Dynasty. Seeing Chu Fan arrive, many respectfully cupped their hands in salute toward Chu Fan, while also offering their congratulations. Led by Dian Wei and Su Chu, Chu Fan quickly entered the Prince of Zhenbei's estate. Chu Fan's mother had been waiting there for a long time. Your son greets mother. Seeing his mother waiting there, Chu Fan showed no arrogance and respectfully bowed to her. Although Chu Fan had already ascended to the throne as the emperor of the great Xia Imperial Dynasty, he did not change the way he addressed Feng Shiran. Instead, he addressed her as an ordinary person would address their own mother. Hurry inside. You'll miss the auspicious time. Feng Shiran seemed busier than Chu Fan. She quickly waved to Chu Fan and spoke, then immediately led Chu Fan into the main hall. Upon entering the main hall, Chu Fan saw two women dressed in bridal clothes, wearing red veils, waiting for his arrival. The subsequent events were simple. Chu Fan's wedding was like that of an ordinary family. After performing the initial rites, they bowed to heaven and earth, bowed to their parents, and then he took the two women back to the imperial palace. The wedding scene will not be elaborated upon here. After bringing the two women back to the imperial palace, the entire palace became lively, as today was the day the sovereign of the great Xia Imperial Dynasty married two imperial consorts. While the great Xia Imperial Palace was bustling, two figures appeared outside Chang'an City. These two figures were Xiao Zi and her guardian. Xiao Zi looked reluctantly toward Chang'an City. At this moment, she had decided to leave without saying goodbye. I hope you can still remember me the next time we meet. Xiao Zi murmured to herself while looking toward Chang'an City, her eyes filled with reluctance and helplessness. Young miss, if you truly want to be with young Master Chu Fan, then you must resolve the family engagement when you return this time. Otherwise, young Master Chu Fan will have to face the Wang family in addition to our Xiao family in the future. Her guardian couldn't help but speak softly to Xiao Zi, his eyes filled with worry. When he mentioned the Wang family, a solemn expression appeared on his face, showing that he was clearly wary of them. Don't worry, I can definitely resolve my engagement when I go back this time. Perhaps I can ask Brother Chu Chun to help me. After all, he has now become the saint of our Taishan Holy Land. Xiao Zi naturally understood her guardian's meaning. She slowly turned her gaze toward the central region, her eyes filled with determination. Young Miss can indeed seek help from Holy Son Chu Chun. After all, Holy Son Chu Chun is young Master Chu Fan's older brother, so he should agree to help young Mississippi. Moreover, he is also young Miss's senior brother. Upon hearing her words, Xiao Zi's guardian's eyes immediately lit up, and he slowly looked toward the central region. Although the Wang family's strength should not be underestimated, it was still slightly weaker compared to the Taishan Holy Land. If Chu Chun, the saint of the Taishan Holy Land, was willing to help their young miss, then resolving this marriage would be very easy. Through their time together, he felt that Chu Fan was a much better match than the Wang family's prodigy. After all, Chu Fan's background was not weak. His older brother was the saint of the Taishan Holy Land. Furthermore, he himself possessed the innate Dao Body, and his strength would definitely reach the Saint King realm in the future. Moreover, Chu Fan had mysterious forces supporting him. All these factors demonstrated Chu Fan's extraordinary nature. After Xiao Zi nodded, she and her guardian disappeared outside Chang'an City. The bustling Chang'an City naturally did not know that Xiao Zi had already left. Even Chu Fan himself did not know she had left Chang'an City. A few days quickly passed. Chang'an City remained incredibly lively during these days, as the emperor taking imperial consorts was naturally a sensational event throughout the entire city. Inside the imperial palace of Chang'an City, Chu Fan sat in the courtyard with a smile on his face. At this moment, he received frontline news transmitted by the net of Luo. He hadn't expected Chen Jibao and Yu Fei to bring him such news. The news that Chen Jibao and Yu Fei had dealt with a million-strong army of the Fengyun dynasty reached him. Although he had anticipated it, Chu Fan was still extremely excited by this news. At the same time, Chu Fan began to look forward to the next news Yu Fei and the other general would send him. Since the two of them had already marched toward the Fengyun imperial dynasty, Chu Fan was anticipating the news of them conquering it. Chapter 217 Chu Fan, distraught upon learning of Xiao Zi's departure. Just as Chu Fan was rejoicing over the great battle of Yu Fei and the others, a figure suddenly appeared before him. Chu Fan looked at the figure in front of him and slowly asked, "Has another battle report come from the front lines?" After speaking, Chu Fan's eyes held a hint of anticipation as he looked at the Luo Wang assassin before him. Reporting to the emperor, this time it's news concerning young Miss Zhao's side. The Luo Wang assassin shook his head respectfully after hearing Chu Fan's words. What happened on her side? Upon hearing the Luo Wang assassin's words, Chu Fan immediately understood that this news concerned Xiao Zi, so he asked with some confusion. After investigation by the net of Luo, young Miss Xiao left Chang'an City on the day of the emperor's grand wedding. As for where young Miss Xiao went, the net of Luo has not yet found out. The Luo Wang assassin spoke to Chu Fan somewhat nervously. He naturally knew that Xiao Zi's status in Chang'an City was extraordinary, so he felt uneasy upon learning of her disappearance and immediately came to report it to Chu Fan. What? She disappeared from Chang'an City? Sure enough, after hearing the Luo Wang assassin's words, Chu Fan immediately couldn't sit still. He stood up and looked at the Luo Wang assassin in front of him with disbelief. Then, Chu Fan ignored the Luo Wang assassin in front of him and went directly to the palace where Xiao Zi used to reside. Soon, Chu Fan appeared outside the palace. The palace at this moment appeared exceptionally desolate, making it clear at a glance that there was no trace of life within. Chu Fan did not hesitate, directly pushed open the palace gate in front of him, and then entered the palace. Chu Fan, upon entering the palace, felt somewhat dazed. Whenever he had entered this palace before, a Z woman with a smile on her face would stand there looking at him, but now it was exceptionally desolate. Chu Fan slowly walked through the palace in a daze, and soon he appeared under the large tree where Xiao Zi often stayed. I didn't expect you to leave without even saying goodbye. Chu Fan looked at the large tree in front of him and said, somewhat dazed. Then he gently moved his feet, and in the next step, he directly arrived on the tree. Then he lay peacefully on the tree, enjoying the tranquil time. At this moment, the figure of the Z woman appeared in Chu Fan's mind. Although Chu Fan and Xiao Zi had not been together for long, he still had inexplicable feelings for Xiao Zi in his heart. It could even be said that the position of Empress of the Great Xia dynasty was reserved for her. He just didn't expect that this time Xiao Zi would leave Chang'an City so quietly. Is it because I've neglected her recently? Chu Fan looked at the sky and murmured. At this moment, for some reason, he felt a pang of sadness in his heart. It was as if something very important was leaving him. This was the first time he had felt so flustered since his transmigration. Could it be that I really like her? Chu Fan began to question himself again. He had originally thought that after his transmigration, he would become an emperor with a harem of 3,000 beauties, but he hadn't expected that Xiao Zi would always occupy a place in his heart. For the following period, Chu Fan slept on this tree, as if to feel Xiao Zi's presence. And the news quickly reached the prince of Jinbei's estate. Feng Xiran also frowned when she learned that Chu Fan had been staying in Xiao Zi's palace. However, when she learned that Xiao Zi had left Chang'an City, she was completely stunned. Although Feng Xiran had also sensed Xiao Zi's affection for her son, but she had never thought that Xiao Zi would one day leave her son and go to the central region. Alas, if only I had known, I would have had Xiao Fan marry her too. But as a prodigy from the central region, how could she marry Xiao Fan along with other women? At this moment, Feng Xiran was also somewhat helpless, but she naturally knew Xiao Zi's identity, so she felt that Xiao Zi's departure this time was very normal. On the other side, Chu Fan slowly woke up from the palace where Xiao Zi used to reside. Then, he leaped directly onto the roof of the palace. Just as he sat down, he suddenly felt something. So, with a hint of confusion, he reached out and removed the tiles below, and then he saw a purple jade pendant beneath. Chu Fan gently picked up the purple jade pendant, and in the next second, this purple jade pendant instantly emitted rays of purple light. The next second, a purple figure appeared before Chu Fan. Chu Fan, by the time you see this jade pendant, I'll have already left. Are you missing this young miss very much? Just as Chu Fan was looking at this purple figure, feeling a bit dazed, a playful voice came from the purple figure. Hearing this voice, Chu Fan immediately turned his gaze towards the purple figure in front of him. Chu Fan, it's not that this young miss wants to leave you, but because this young miss has things to do in the central region. After this young miss resolves the matters in the central region, I will come to the eastern region to find you, where you can come to Taishian Holy Land to find this young miss when you have the strength to go to the eastern region. Under Chu Fan's gaze, the figure continued to speak. Looking at the proud expression on the face of the purple figure, Chu Fan suddenly smiled. He didn't expect that even in a recorded image, Xiao Zi would still be so proud. However, the matter this young miss needs to do this time is a bit troublesome, so I'm afraid we won't see each other for a long time. But no matter how long it takes, you must not forget this young Mississippi. Under Chu Fan's gaze, the purple figure continued to speak. At the same time, Chu Fan also caught a hint of helplessness and reluctance in her eyes. Then, the purple figure slowly dissipated before Chu Fan. As the purple figure slowly vanished before Chu Fan, the jade pendant also slowly fell into Chu Fan's hand, and then there was no movement at all. No matter what awaits you in the central region, I will find you as quickly as possible. Chu Fan's eyes became firm at this moment, although he didn't know what exactly awaited Xiao Zi in the central region. But Chu Fan knew that anything that required Xiao Zi to leave was definitely no ordinary matter, and from Xiao Zi's tone just now, Chu Fan felt that this matter was not simple. After all, if the matter Xiao Zi had to do were simple, she wouldn't have spoken with that tone. So, Chu Fan began to get busy, wanting to unify the entire eastern region as quickly as possible, and then go to the central region to find Xiao Zi. Chapter 2:18 Terrifying Siege Speed, the King of the Wind and Cloud Dynasty Moves. Back in the Imperial Palace, Chu Fan began dispatching all the soldiers he had summoned, leaving only the powerhouses to guard Chang'an City. After all, to quickly resolve the war between the Tianqing Dynasty and the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty, the fastest way was to send all these soldiers to the battlefield, which would accelerate their Great Xia Dynasty's progress. As batches of soldiers were sent to the battlefield, the Great Xia Dynasty's offensive speed rapidly increased. In just 1 month, the Great Xia Dynasty had captured 1/3 of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's territory. On the other side, the Tianqing Dynasty had almost half of its territory fall into the hands of the Great Xia Dynasty. This damned Great Xia Dynasty, this damned Chu Fan, to have captured over 70 of our cities so quickly. In the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's Imperial Palace, Yin Xiaodian looked at the battle report with a face full of fury. He hadn't expected that this time they would not only fail to gain territory from the Great Xia Dynasty, but would also lose so much of their own. However, they were quite helpless now, as the Great Xia Dynasty had gone mad this time, launching a strong offensive directly against their Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. Even though the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty reacted in time, in this great war, they could only fight and retreat, ultimately losing over 70 cities in 1 month. I implore your majesty to prepare in advance. Otherwise, our Fengyun Imperial Dynasty will suffer heavy losses this time, as the Great Xia Dynasty's attacking force is still continuously advancing towards our imperial capital. An old general, seeing Yuan Xiaoyan's furious face, also stepped forward helplessly. Although this old general was also filled with anger at this moment, they had to find a way to deal with the Great Xia Dynasty now, or else the Great Xia Dynasty's army awaited them. The other officials of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty also looked at Yuan Xiaotian with worry after hearing the old general's words. After all, the current situation was not optimistic for their Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. The Great Xia Dynasty's army seemed invincible, heading directly towards them. Therefore, at this moment, the officials of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty all placed their hopes on Yuan Xiaotian. As the emperor of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty, Yuan Xiaotian should naturally know the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's trump cards, so they all looked at him with expectant eyes. Yuan Xiaotian also felt somewhat helpless as he looked at the gazes of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's officials. He hadn't expected that these officials would ultimately still have to rely on him. However, if he didn't choose to deal with the Great Xia Dynasty's army now, the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty would be completely annihilated in the river of history. So, Yuan Xiaotian also began to waver in his heart at this moment. He was wondering whether to use the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's trump card. Although the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty had lost over 70 cities in this month. But the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty was, after all, once the #1 Imperial Dynasty in the eastern region, so their trump cards are naturally more powerful than those of the other 3 great dynasties. As the emperor of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty, Yuan Xiaotian naturally knew how powerful his old ancestor's strength was, but he had no intention of using his old ancestor's power yet. After all, if he were to directly use the power of those old ancestors now, it would completely expose the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty's foundation to everyone's view. Helpless, Yuan Xiaotian could only dismiss the officials present, then remained alone in the palace, pondering how to face the Great Xia Dynasty next. Through his analysis of the Great Xia Dynasty's offensive these days, he understood that the Great Xia Dynasty's strongest force was none other than the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry led by Zhao Zilong. As long as Zhao Zilong and the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry he led were dealt with, their Fengyun Imperial Dynasty would have a chance to turn the tide. Zhao Zilong of the King Realm, huh? In that case, our Fengyun Imperial Dynasty will dispatch King Realm powerhouses. We'll see if your Great Xia Dynasty still has any trump cards then. After thinking for a while, Yuan Xiaotian's gaze drifted towards the sky. Then he slowly left the main hall, and the next second, he went directly to the ancestral land of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. At this time, the Tianqing Dynasty was even more chaotic than the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. After all, in just 1 month, the Tianqing Dynasty had undergone such terrifying changes, and the cultivators within the Tianqing Dynasty had begun to riot. Although the Tianqing Dynasty's army was suppressing these rioting cultivators, as time went on, these cultivators also began to resist. At the same time, many cultivators also fled the Tianqing Dynasty and went to the Great Xia Dynasty, because these cultivators all believed that the ultimate victor of this great war would be the Great Xia Dynasty. So for them, surrendering to the Great Xia Dynasty now was the clearest choice. Just as the Great War continued, on the other side, within the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty, Zhao Zilong was leading the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry to continuously attack the cities of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty. With the enhancement of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, Zhao Zilong appeared incredibly valiant and invincible, as if he were a war god descended from the heavens. Zilong is indeed most suited for the battlefield. After this great war, his reputation will probably spread throughout the entire eastern region. Chen Jibao, who was behind, saw this scene and a smile appeared on his lips. At the same time, a hint of excitement appeared in his eyes when he saw Zhao Zilong. It should be known that the proud Chen Jibao rarely praised others, but he was full of admiration for Zhao Zilong. As for Yu Fei, he had split off a large army and was heading towards the imperial capital on the other side of the Fengyun Imperial Dynasty, with Yang Zixing as the vanguard of Yu Fei's army. However, the upcoming battle might be even more interesting. Chen Jibao's gaze now drifted towards the city ahead. At this moment, he sensed several King Realm Qi auras within the city. Although he was somewhat surprised when he sensed these King Realm Qi auras, no surprise could be seen on his face, as if he had long anticipated this situation. At this time, Zhao Zilong in front also seemed to have sensed these auras. He slowly looked towards the city ahead. Then his voice resounded passionately in the ears of everyone present. "Stop hiding like a timid turtle. Since you've come, then show yourselves." Zhao Zilong, holding his dragon gallbladder bright silver spear, looked solemnly at the city in front of him. At the same time, he sat quietly on his warhorse, waiting for movement from ahead. "I didn't expect that after hundreds of years of not appearing, a prodigy like you would emerge in the eastern region. But do you know that a prodigy who hasn't grown up yet is far from being called a prodigy? Sure enough, as soon as Zhao Zilong's voice fell, an old voice slowly came from within the city. Chapter 219. Zhao Zilong challenges 3 kings, Li Yuanba accompanying the army. Then, several rays of light streaked across the sky, and the next second, these figures instantly appeared before Zhao Zilong, all clad in dark gray long robes. These dark gray long robes completely enveloped them, preventing everyone present from clearly seeing their faces, but a terrifying aura could be felt emanating from them. I never thought that the king realm cultivators of the Fengyan dynasty would all be a bunch of rats, and a bunch of rats that can't see the light of day. Zhao Zilong looked at the 3 elders in front of him and spoke disdainfully, his words full of sarcasm, and he appeared extremely arrogant. Kid, don't think that just because you have achieved a breakthrough to the king realm, you are invincible. In front of us, even if you were a dragon, you must prostrate. As soon as Zhao Zilong's words fell, one of the elders furiously stepped forward and spoke angrily to Zhao Zilong, his voice filled with uncontrollable rage, as if he was about to rush forward and tear Zhao Zilong to shreds the next second. Then I'd like to see what your Fengyan dynasty intends to use to block this dragon of mine. Zhao Zilong looked at the 3 elders in front of him, with no trace of fear in his eyes. Instead, he gripped his long spear and stared at the 3 elders with a determined expression, while a terrifying battle intent emanated from his body. The great snow dragon cavalry beside him, feeling the battle intent emanating from him, also retreated one after another. At this moment, they only knew that they could no longer join this battle. Then let this old ancestor teach you how to behave. Upon hearing Zhao Zilong's words, the elder from the Fengyan dynasty showed no mercy. He threw a punch towards Zhao Zilong. His fist seemed to transform into a ray of light, instantly appearing before Zhao Zilong's face. However, just as his fist was about to strike Zhao Zilong's face, Zhao Zilong instantly disappeared from his warhorse, and his fist appeared at the elder's head. The next second, Zhao Zilong delivered a fierce punch that sent the elder flying. Having done all this, he leisurely returned to his warhorse, then looked at the elder who had been sent flying with a disdainful expression. Boom! A deafening roar was heard, and the next second, the elder made intimate contact with the ground, while his body continued to rub against it. Instantly, a deep mark was etched into the ground, and he was covered in dust from the impact, looking extremely disheveled. This person's strength is not weak. It seems that you and I must act today. One of the remaining 2 elders, seeing this scene, spoke to the elder beside him with a solemn expression. After speaking, a spiked mace appeared in his hand. Holding the spiked mace, he directly brought it down with all his might towards Zhao Zilong, and the terrifying power shattered the surrounding laws. Meanwhile, the other elder also produced a dark green long saber in his hand. As the first elder's spiked mace was just ascending towards Zhao Zilong, the long saber in his hand also slashed toward Zhao Zilong's chest. Seeing this, Zhao Zilong showed no panic. He quickly raised the dragon gallbladder bright silver spear in his right hand, and with his own strength, used the dragon gallbladder bright silver spear to block the spiked mace that was smashing down from the sky. At the same time, he directly drew the long sword hanging at his waist with his left hand, and very quickly used this long sword to block the long saber that was slicing towards his chest. The next second, the sound of clashing weapons instantly rang out, and at the same time, Zhao Zilong's mount, Ye Zhao Yu, let out a terrifying roar. Then, it directly led Zhao Zilong to charge out. Zhao Zilong, riding on his warhorse, continuously fought against the 2 elders in the sky with the long spear in his hand. At this point, the long sword he had just drawn was put back. Relying solely on the dragon gallbladder bright silver spear in his hand, Zhao Zilong was now fighting the 2 elders to a draw, but the aura of the Middle King realm emanating from these 2 elders caused the surrounding yellow sand to constantly swirl. And the elder who had just been sent flying by Zhao Zilong's punch also slowly crawled out from the yellow sand, although he looked very disheveled at this moment. However, Zhao Zilong's punch had not severely injured him. It had only left a fist print on his face, making him look a bit messy. Looking at Zhao Zilong, who was battling the 2 elders, a furious expression appeared on the elder's face. Then, a long spear suddenly appeared in his hand, and he directly joined the battlefield, holding the long spear. Zhao Zilong showed no concern about this elder joining. Instead, he continued to use the dragon gallbladder bright silver spear in his hand to block the attacks of the 3. At the same time, the aura of the Middle King realm belonging to him completely erupted, and more importantly, as the battle continued, Zhao Zilong's aura grew stronger and stronger. Moreover, faint dragon roars could be heard around him, and a silver-white giant dragon was circling Zhao Zilong, protecting him. Although Zilong's strength is only at the Middle King realm. With his powerful physique and martial skill, he can fight against a King Completion realm cultivator. He truly lives up to being called one of the most perfect generals by the Emperor. Chen Jibao, outside the battlefield, looked at Zhao Zilong in the center of the battlefield and nodded with satisfaction. Although Zhao Zilong was facing 3 cultivators who were also in the Middle King realm, he still held a slight advantage. From this point, one could see just how powerful Zhao Zilong's strength was. I also want to try their strength, but these 3 alone are too weak, so weak that I don't even want to make a move. A thin young man beside Chen Jibao looked at Zhao Zilong and the 3 King realm old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty in the center of the battlefield and spoke with some disdain. In the thin young man's hands were 2 terrifying iron hammers. This person was Li Yuanba. This time, Chu Fan wanted to take down the entire eastern region as quickly as possible, so he directly sent Li Yuanba to Yu Fei and Chen Jibao. Because Chen Jibao was the main force attacking the Fengyan dynasty this time, Yu Fei suggested keeping Li Yuanba by his side, which is why Li Yuanba was with Chen Jibao. Yuanba's strength has already reached the middle true king realm. These minor king realm cultivators are naturally not worth your effort, but I'm afraid there might be someone in the imperial capital of the Fengyan dynasty who is worthy of your attention. Chen Jibao laughed heartily after hearing Li Yuanba's words. Then he leisurely cast his gaze towards the location of the imperial capital of the Fengyan dynasty. Since even the former Great Yin dynasty had true king realm old ancestors, how could Fengyan, the first imperial dynasty of the eastern region, not have true king realm existences?
Chapter 2:20 Zhao Zilong's powerful slaying of the enemy. Although Chen Jibao felt that the powerful experts of the Fengyan dynasty might not be particularly formidable, since even the former Great Yan dynasty had an old ancestor in the true king realm, then the Fengyan dynasty should have someone capable of fighting Li Yuanba. Therefore, for Li Yuanba, the person he truly needed to deal with was the ultimate powerful expert of the Fengyan dynasty. After Li Yuanba heard his words, he looked with great interest towards the direction where Zhao Zilong was currently fighting. At this moment, Zhao Zilong was holding a long spear and continuously battling the 3 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty who were in the king realm in front of him. Their battle had fully erupted, and the long spear in Zhao Zilong's hand was like a revived venomous snake, constantly striking towards the 3 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty. The old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty continuously used the weapons in their hands to block the long spear wielded by Zhao Zilong. At the same time, the coordination between the 3 of them made it impossible for Zhao Zilong to successfully break through their attacks for a time. Instead, their battle had entered a stalemate. Phoenix nod. Zhao Zilong looked at the 3 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty in the king realm before him, a serious expression appearing on his face. Immediately after, he swiftly thrust the long spear in his hand toward one of the old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty, who was in the middle king realm. Following this, a golden phoenix appeared behind Zhao Zilong, and this golden phoenix charged directly toward that old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty. Simultaneously, the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi continuously gathered from the environment toward Zhao Zilong's body. In the next second, Zhao Zilong, carrying the golden phoenix, charged directly toward that elder of the Fengyan dynasty, who was in the middle king realm. While the other 2 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty failed to react in time, Zhao Zilong's strike landed directly on the elder of the Fengyan dynasty, who was in the middle king realm. A terrifying force immediately struck the body of this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty. Ah! Immediately after, the old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty let out a miserable scream, his entire body instantly turning into a blur and flying out like a cannonball. At the same time, the weapon in his hand fell out. The other 2 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty naturally reacted at this moment, and they quickly rushed forward, intending to severely injure Zhao Zilong in the process. But how could Zhao Zilong give them a chance now? His movement technique was like a ghost, and he instantly vanished from his original spot. When he reappeared, he had already arrived beside the old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, who was in the Middle King realm. At this moment, this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty still hadn't reacted, yet Zhao Zilong had already appeared in front of him. A look of shock appeared in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and rapidly manifested a black shield of light around himself to block Zhao Zilong's attack. The terrifying force carried by Zhao Zilong's spear thrust directly pierced through the black shield of light in front of him, and then harshly stabbed the body of this elder of the Fengyan dynasty. Instantly, his long spear pierced a large hole through the shoulder of this elder of the Fengyan dynasty. After executing this move, Zhao Zilong wanted to thrust another spear strike toward this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, but he no longer had the chance. This was because the other 2 old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty had reacted and appeared before him, simultaneously swinging their weapons toward his body. If he wanted to continue attacking the severely wounded old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, he would have to endure the attacks of the other two old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty. Therefore, Zhao Zilong frowned, immediately gave up on continuing the attack against this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, and instead turned around, holding his dragon gallbladder bright silver spear, and began attacking the other two old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty. Just moments ago, the three old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty managed to fight Zhao Zilong to a draw, but now, with only two old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty remaining, they naturally could no longer hold back Zhao Zilong. Zhao Zilong fought with increasing ferocity, like a war god. The long spear in his hand continuously emitted bursts of phoenix cries, while a golden phoenix constantly circled around Zhao Zilong. This golden phoenix blocked all incoming attacks for Zhao Zilong, while also continuously launching attacks toward the surroundings. Instantly, Zhao Zilong suppressed the two old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty. On the other side, the severely wounded old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty watched the battlefield where Zhao Zilong and the two others fought, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Even if he wanted to join the battle at this moment, it would be extremely difficult, as one of his arms had already been successfully crippled by Zhao Zilong. It seems Zilong will be able to deal with these three old fellows of the Fengyan dynasty in the King realm soon. Chen Jibao, who witnessed the scene from outside the battlefield, raised a smile at the corner of his mouth. He naturally saw through the situation of the battle in the center of the battlefield. Based on how things were developing, Zhao Zilong would quickly be able to eliminate the old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty. After hearing his words, Li Yuanba silently nodded. Although Zhao Zilong's strength was not as great as his, Zhao Zilong was an invincible existence when dealing with opponents of the same realm. And the facts were exactly as they had anticipated. After Zhao Zilong seized an opportunity to eliminate one old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty during the battle, the pressure on him vanished. Soon, he seized a flaw in another old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty and immediately killed him. As for the remaining severely wounded old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty, Zhao Zilong did not pay him any attention. After eliminating these two old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty, Zhao Zilong finally turned his gaze leisurely toward the severely wounded old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty. Immediately after, his entire body instantly turned into an afterimage and vanished from his spot. The next second he reappeared, he had already arrived beside the severely wounded old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty. Zhao Zilong then showed no mercy, immediately piercing the body of this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty with a single spear thrust, causing this old ancestor of the Fengyan dynasty to die with lingering resentment. Even until their deaths, they did not understand why the three of them combined were no match for Zhao Zilong. After dealing with these three old ancestors of the Fengyan dynasty, Zhao Zilong leaped up and returned to his warhorse. He then gazed leisurely at the city before him. At this moment, the people on the city wall looked at the silver-armored general riding on the warhorse, their eyes filled with panic and confusion. After all, this silver-armored general had effortlessly dealt with the three old ancestors of their Fengyan dynasty, who were in the King realm. Those who surrender shall live. As for Zhao Zilong, he slowly rested the dragon gallbladder bright silver spear behind his back, then stared intently at the city before him, his voice transmitting outwards calmly. However, within this calm voice was a hint of decisive killing intent.